That was exhausting, Ash thought as he slumped on the soft sofa in the living room. Alicia was at the academy doing her training. While she could have stayed here and practiced in the basement, she preferred to practice away from Ash. Because, according to her, Ash disturbed quite a lot whenever she was home and trying to do any work. That's not called disturbance. It's called love. Grumbling, he closed his eyes and entered his soul space. Even though his body was resting, his mind was not going to rest. The soul space was still the same as ever, with a pitch-black soul sea that seemed to have grown even darker. The previously floating and playful fragments of his memories were nowhere to be seen, as they had already been absorbed into his soul library. Now, there was nothing but endless black water, like the collected weight of all the suffering and pain he had gone through. Why do I always get an ominous feeling, as if I am gazing into the abyss whenever I look at my soul sea? Shifting his gaze away from it, he focused on other things. The rest of the scenery remained unchanged. The soul space appeared infinite, stretching with no end in sight. The sky was a glowing azure, radiating a gentle warmth without the presence of a sun. At the very center stood a pitch-black tree that seemed to have grown even taller than before. Its countless multicolored runic leaves shimmered faintly, while intricate runic lines glowed across its surface. Some runes even floated around the tree itself, circling it like a protective shield. At its base were two small doors, with the words, "Library," and "Vault" etched clearly above them. Ash entered the library. His steps echoed softly as he walked toward his seat at the heart of the endless chamber. Towering bookshelves floated in every direction, stretching beyond sight and disappearing into a ceiling that did not exist. He lowered himself onto the comfortable chair, crafted from the wood and leaves of his soul tree, and turned his eyes to the parchment resting on the desk before him. On it were scribbled words. Another quest? Runes? Festival. Right, I need to think and make decisions about these things too. I guess Ray has gotten a quest to enter that space crack. As for why, I don't know, but I have a guess of what it could be. Ash muttered as he thought about the words and events in the novel. Even though the plot and everything that was now happening were no longer the same as in the novel, it still gave him a perfect understanding of many things, like how the system behaved, what the nature of people was, and about the world as a whole. From the words inside the novel, the system Ray has only issues quests when it leads to three things. First, a training quest that gives him stats and enhances his skills. It also includes fighting quests related to monsters and other beings. Second, quests which lead to Ray finding a rune. And third, the last kind, which is related to fate. Whether it is about going according to the flow of fate or whether it is something about emergency and unexpected situations, it all comes under this category. So, if we think it all through, with him saying that the crack has a space entanglement and it leads to somewhere else, not exactly to the position of the beast. Ash did not fully understand what space entanglement was at first, but he managed to grasp the idea. Later, when he read about it in the Dragon's collection of books, many things became clearer to him. Space entanglement is a phenomenon that occurs when space itself becomes unstable, contracting and forming temporary connections between different locations. Sometimes more than two places fuse, which leads to the entanglement of space. In such cases, if a person enters from one side, he may appear in a completely different place rather than the one shown by the portal. In the case of the space crack in the Untamed Forest, it connected three different places. While the beast could step into Acumia, anyone entering from here would not end up in the beast's dwelling, but rather in another unknown location. Thus, three places, Acumia, the semi-divine beast's dwelling, and one unidentified region, were temporarily connected through unstable space. Then, the quest given to Ray could come under all three categories. It might prove to be something useful for Ray, a chance for his skills to shine. It might lead to another rune, one never mentioned in the novel. And it might also be something tied to fate itself. All three possibilities were valid. It was up to Ash to discover which one it truly was. He closed his eyes, his thoughts running furiously, one possibility after another flashing through his mind. At last, He reached a conclusion and scribbled something on the parchment lying on his desk, just below the previous notes. First, 30%. Second, 50%. Third, 20%. He wrote down the probabilities of what he believed might be found there. Looks like I got another reason to enter the crack, Ash muttered. He had already planned to step into it, wanting to absorb the rune of time and to challenge something opposite to his deep-rooted nature. Although the rune of life and the rune of death had made him fearless on the surface, deep within, he was still a coward at his core. It did not mean that he feared battle. He considered himself a coward because he despised the thought of dying before living a complete and faithful life with Alicia. He wanted to remain by her side always, to walk every moment with her. His cowardice came from not wanting to risk a reckless act that might lead to his death and force Alicia to suffer alone, reliving the very same pain he had once endured when she died. He refused to let her go through that again. There is a high chance that I might find a rune there, and if not that, I might stumble upon something that makes me stronger. Or perhaps I will discover a hidden legacy, if the quest was given according to the first reason. And if it is something tied to fate, the last reason, then I do not know what to expect. Still, it will be fun. Ash smiled lightly at the thought, his expression carrying a mixture of resolve and quiet anticipation. But it was not as simple as it appeared to be. He needed to go to the neutral continent to get that rune, because if there really was another unknown rune behind the space crack, Ash would need a skill that could reveal the true name of the runes. He was also saving his last skill-making chance for creating that skill alone. By now, he had already collected almost all the runes present on this planet. Only 3 remained: the rune of the neutral continent, the rune of the dwarf continent, and the one hidden deep within the sea. He was already working on finding the rune of the dwarf continent, and he was preparing to head to the neutral continent soon. And someone else was, at this very moment, moving into the deep sea to retrieve the last rune for him. He closed his eyes once more and shifted his focus elsewhere. His vision blurred, turning gray and black, while the sensation of rapid descent filled him, as though his consciousness was plummeting downward at high speed. It was Snow who was currently moving deeper into the sea. Ash had discovered something interesting about Snow's growth. She could become stronger and larger by killing and consuming other monsters or beasts. He had realized this when Snow emerged from his soul space and devoured the corpses of the monsters he and Ray had killed. The way her body pulsed with power after feeding had startled him at first, but soon he understood what it meant. Thus, Ash made a decision and sent her into the sea. The ocean was overflowing with creatures that no one had the time to kill, and countless dungeons lay hidden beneath the waves. The whole sea was considered a danger zone, often called a death zone by those who knew of its horrors. No one had ever returned alive from there. It was such a perilous place that even Ray, who was blessed with the system, had only obtained the final rune of the sea when the world itself was already collapsing. But Ash had a different path to take. He sent Snow because he was confident she could retrieve the rune swiftly. Snow carried the abilities of all the runes Ash had collected, which made her nearly immortal. Her concealment ability was even more refined than Ash's own, letting her move unnoticed through hostile territory. The sea would serve not only as a place to find the rune, but also as a battlefield for Snow to grow stronger. More importantly, it would save precious time, as she could also store the rune and any other useful items in Ash's soul space. And if she encountered a beast too powerful, one capable of endangering her life, Ash could summon her back instantly. All of this was possible because of the special connection they shared. The soul bond. And then there is this, Ash thought as he opened his eyes and looked at the invitation letter resting on his desk. The parchment felt heavy in his hands, its seal glowing faintly. It had not been sent by Malicia, but by Saint Lucan himself. Now, what should I do? Ash thought with a complicated expression. He wanted nothing more than to ruin that festival and shatter their celebration. But another feeling pressed on him, one far softer and far harder to ignore. He was growing greedy for something else entirely, the chance to spend time with Alicia at that festival, to live through one of the dreams they had never managed to fulfill in their previous life. It was not as though they had never gone to festivals before, But this was the first festival of this life filled with fantasy. And it was bound to be grand. The thought of walking through the colorful stalls with her, hearing the music, seeing the lights, and simply holding her hand made his chest ache with longing. I will just go to the festival, not to the party. Ash decided at last, after thinking it through again and again. This also doesn't work. Lyra thought as she looked at the potion in her hand. It was blue in color, but its quality was not good, and her green eyes reflected a mix of frustration and disappointment. All around her, broken potion bottles were scattered across the floor, some still holding small amounts of leftover liquid. The small alchemy room was designed in a unique way, made solely for the purpose of alchemy. The walls and floor were all white, meant to maintain cleanliness and make every spilled stain immediately visible. One side of the room was lined with empty equipment, neatly placed and waiting for use, while the other side was filled with shelves stacked with all sorts of potions. The remaining two walls each had a door, one leading outside and the other opening into a large garden, where every herb their family could manage to grow was carefully cultivated. She threw the bottle in her hand onto the floor, the glass shattering instantly and spilling its contents. The liquid spread out only for a moment before being absorbed into the ground. The floor had been crafted to soak up all liquids and carry them to the garden soil, since potions always contained mana and could be used as fertilizer without negative effects. Of course, it was not as if accidents never happened. When they did, they usually caused explosions, which the reinforced walls were built to withstand, or the creation of some harmful virus, which was also accounted for with protective measures. The broken glass pieces, however, were nothing special. They were simply swept up and sent to the garbage. Why is it not working? Lyra leaned back on her chair, strands of her violet hair falling forward even though her hair was tied neatly behind her head. She was dressed in a white lab coat inscribed with enchantments, strong enough to protect her from all manner of accidents, whether it was an explosion or a dangerous virus forming at the molecular level. He said that it would work. The he in her thoughts was none other than Ash. I did everything perfectly. The amount of herbs, the exact heat, everything. I even used the phoenix blood correctly. But it is still not forming properly. Whether she used a drop of phoenix blood or not, if the potion failed, then it was useless. Failed potions were nothing more than unstable liquids that might or might not carry side effects, which was why they were always discarded. There was a universal rule in alchemy. A potion was only considered a success if it turned as transparent as water, showing that every element had fused and reacted in perfect balance. Did he lie to me? The thought made her chest tighten, though when she recalled the procedure, everything had seemed sound. Then if he did not lie, are my skills the problem? Her expression became sullen thinking about it. She had always been compared with her mother from early childhood, whether it was about simple daily tasks, academics, or the subject of alchemy. She was compared with her mother everywhere. Her mother was a prodigy, and in fact, every single saint that humanity currently had was a prodigy never seen before. That did not mean Lyra was not a prodigy herself, but there was still quite a gap that no one could ignore. For example, even Ash and Ray were considered prodigies in everyone's eyes, but no one compared them with the childhood versions of the saints. The reason was simple: even the childhood versions of the saints would pale in comparison with those two. Then where did that leave Lyra? At the bottom? I am not at the bottom. A single tear escaped her eyes as all sorts of emotions rose from deep within her heart. She had never liked her mother because of this, because it always made her feel small, as if her existence was being weighed and judged like some kind of market value. Even Saint Lydia had never directly compared her, yet she had also never stopped others when they did. Lyra always felt overwhelmed by the vast status of her mother, so much so that she often wished she had been born into a normal family. She did not like this much attention, and she despised the constant criticism that came with it. This led her to distance herself from others, spending most of her time with animals and nature, where everything was equal and no one judged her. She loved that world deeply, where silence and companionship came without expectations. She was certain her awakening of the nature affinity and her rare summoner class were both related to the years she had spent in the wilds. Or perhaps it was the opposite, that she had always been drawn to nature and animals because those talents were destined to awaken in her. That was why she had been so excited when Ash brought her an old parchment that contained the method of making the resurrection potion from ancient times. Most of the procedures written on it were even true. She hoped to bring a groundbreaking change in the field of alchemy with that parchment, something that would finally allow her to escape the shadow of her mother. That was the root of her desperation. But when she said she would include Ash's name as well, giving him credit if the potion succeeded, Ash refused without hesitation. He said he knew nothing about alchemy, that he had only brought the parchment to her because he wanted to help a classmate. He also said all sorts of strange things like, "Don't compare yourself with others. I am incomparable, and even that I am more talented than anyone in alchemy." As if he knew what I wanted to hear. But she covered her face with both hands and thought, "He thinks so highly of me, but I don't believe I am that talented enough. I even wasted a drop of phoenix blood. It must have been incredibly valuable." Even though she could acquire most ingredients without much effort, phoenix blood was different. It was rare, precious, and difficult to obtain. She was sure her mother had some, but she also knew Saint Lydia would never allow her to experiment with it. "I don't know what to do." And with that thought, she sat there quietly breaking. This was easy, Ash thought as he looked at the clear potion in his hands. He did not know whether it was luck or something else, but he had succeeded in a single try. Though it was the most basic potion out there, one that could be easily made, it still gave him a sense of accomplishment. "Looks like I am quite talented in alchemy," Ash thought with a faint smile, his morale rising at the small success. His thoughts then drifted toward Lyra. She must be breaking out a lot by now. It was true. He had given her the recipe for the resurrection potion, but it was a false recipe and a false method. He had deceived her in such a way that the process did not feel wrong at all. On the contrary, it appeared flawless, almost as if it were the most perfect version of the procedure. It had been difficult for Ash to devise something like that, but still, he succeeded. He was quite good at something like this, and with the knowledge of countless herbs and their properties stored in his mind, he had carefully altered the formula. Most of the herbs were replaced with others that seemed similar in effect, yet those substitutes carried hidden properties. When combined with particular ingredients, they created problems that were hard to predict at first glance. There was a very big reason Ash had gone this far. I needed her to get confident in herself. And to make that possible, Ash had created such a plan. When Lyra will eventually notice the changes he had made and began correcting them one by one, she would end up succeeding in making the potion. That success would be entirely her own, and her confidence would soar. She would not even feel guilty for accepting someone else's help, since what Ash had given her was wrong, and what she achieved afterward would be proof of her own ability. And in the novel, it was her own efforts, and Ash did not want to steal someone's effort. After all, Ash had once tried to make the resurrection potion for Alicia himself, but he had failed. No matter how hard he tried, he simply did not have the skill for it. Because he wanted to prepare for any kind of emergency, he had pushed forward with the potion making now, especially since he did not think Lyra and Ray would grow close enough for her to create something like this for him. So, ensuring that things unfolded the way they were meant to, at least for the other characters, was something he could still do. And in the process, he could also gain the benefit of having a potion at hand. Though if she breaks and gives up, it could also backfire. But I will believe in her. If she succeeds, it will be beneficial, and if not, I can always provide her with the actual formula. Obtaining phoenix blood was no longer that difficult. If it had been a few months ago, it would have been impossible. But now that he could enter the dragon's treasury, it was within his reach. And now that actual phoenixes will soon be flying above our heads, there will be no need to worry much about it. Ash thought with a small smile as he placed the finished potion aside and began working on another, this time something far more challenging than the previous one. October 15th, 5031. The already beautiful city of magic, Arcanes, looked even more otherworldly than usual. Decorations of every kind adorned the city, giving it a festive glow, as if the entire place had been dressed for a grand wedding. Though there was no wedding today, only a festival, The streets and buildings carried a sense of celebration that seemed almost alive. Red cloths draped from the walls of the houses in elegant semicircles, complemented by handmade flower decorations woven from fabrics. Every piece of decoration seemed deliberately connected to the next, forming an unbroken cascade of color that gave the city a distinctive, harmonious charm. The streets bustled with people, laughter mixing with the calls of stall owners. Stalls of all shapes and sizes lined the pathways, selling treats, trinkets, and curious artifacts. At the same time, lanterns and magical lights glimmered from every corner, bathing the city in a warm, gentle radiance. Even the trees, though naturally green, were touched with red dyes that shone softly under the mana-infused lights, giving the entire city a look of magical fire without harming a single leaf. Empty spaces had been filled with swings and small attractions for children, their delighted shrieks blending with the melody of music that echoed throughout the city. At the center, a massive bonfire rose high, visible from almost every part of Arcanes. Its flames were unlike any ordinary fire. They radiated warmth without scorching and gently healed the injured who approached, washing over their wounds and leaving them whole. Those healed would dance around the eternal flame, rejoicing in both its magic and its beauty, adding to the rhythm of the festival. Some even started to worship it. It was evening now, the sun dipping low, casting a golden glow over the city and turning the red and gold decorations into a dreamlike sea of colors. At the quieter end of the city, slightly away from the thickest crowds, two figures walked hand in hand, moving slowly and taking in the spectacle. "It's beautiful, even from this close up," Alicia whispered, her voice soft, almost breathless. Her eyes sparkled with wonder, reflecting the myriad lights and colors around her. She looked like a child seeing something magical for the first time, every sense absorbed in the moment. Her dress was a masterpiece of dark elegance, black velvet forming the bodice, embroidered with delicate scarlet lace tracing intricate patterns. From her waist, layers of crimson silk flowed downward in gentle, graceful folds, the edges painted with subtle shadowed designs that caught the eye. Chains of pearls and tiny gemstones draped across her skirts, twinkling faintly in the evening light, as if constellations had been sewn into the fabric. Her silver hair fell in soft, weightless waves, luminous against the fading sunlight, framing her figure and enhancing the quiet majesty of her presence. Her eyes, a deep molten crimson, seemed to hold the glow of fire and the richness of fresh blood beneath glass, intense and radiant, yet serene. Together, gown, hair, and eyes created a vision of breathtaking beauty, impossible to ignore, as if she carried the festival's magic within herself. "Yeah, it's nice, I guess." But even more than her, someone else was attracting attention. Next to her, Ash drew the eyes of everyone nearby. He wore a long black coat that reached almost to his boots, lined with deep crimson that shimmered whenever he moved. A cape hung over his shoulder, draped evenly, with red crystals dangling from its tips like drops of blood, catching the light with each step. Thin chains and metal ornaments ran across his chest, converging at a glowing red gem on his collar that framed his pale, sharp features and gave him a striking presence. Beneath the coat, a fitted vest and shirt hugged his frame, complemented by slim black trousers tucked neatly into polished boots. Black gloves covered his hands, lending each movement a smooth and deliberate grace. His white hair fell softly across his face, which was now trimmed a little, falling till his neck, and his icy blue eyes shone like frozen crystal. The contrast of black and red, combined with the calm confidence in his posture, gave him a commanding presence, as if he had stepped directly out of shadow and moonlight. Together, they looked like a couple who were the most eye-catching and attractive. "Looks like we should not have dressed this much," Ash muttered next to Alicia's ear, pulling her slightly closer. Alicia gave him an elbow to his ribs, hearing his words. "Ouch! That hurts." Ash winced, rubbing his side. "Shut up. Who goes around without dressing properly? I've always wanted to try these types of dresses, just never had the opportunity. And don't make me laugh. Hurt and you." Alicia retorted with a teasing smile. They whispered to each other as they walked slowly, their voices low and intimate, fully aware that every pair of eyes seemed to follow them. Hey, let's speed up a little, you know? I mean, let's get to the center a little faster, Ash suggested, irritation creeping in as the crowd's attention remained fixed on them. Okay, Alicia nodded. Before her words could even finish, they vanished, appearing some distance away from the large bonfire of eternal flames at the center. Even here, the effect was unchanged. People looked at them with amazement, admiration, and even hints of envy. You brought us directly to the center, but I wanted to stroll the whole festival, Alicia said with a pitiful expression, her eyes sparkling with playful disappointment. Cute, Ash thought, a small smile appearing. He was here only for her happiness, so how could he refuse? He had come to the center first to observe the eternal flames up close, but her delight always came first. My curiosity can wait a little longer. There is someone else who takes priority right now. Within a second, they vanished again, reappearing in the middle of the festival. They continued to stroll from one stall to another, weaving through the crowd with effortless grace. Both of them looked as if they had stepped out of a dream, the kind that made people pause and smile without knowing why. Their movements were fluid, graceful, and unhurried, flowing through the crowd like a gentle breeze, drawing attention without demanding it. The festival lights caught the glimmer of her dress and his coat, making the colors dance softly, as if the magic of the festival itself had woven them into its display. Laughter and chatter swirled around them, yet somehow their presence made the world seem quieter for a moment, as if everything paused to admire their quiet elegance. Even amid the vibrant decorations and joyous crowd, they seemed to shine with effortless charm. Alicia, however, was too excited to be contained. Look at that one. They're making candy sculptures shaped like dragons, she exclaimed, her voice full of awe and delight. At another stall, she wrinkled her nose at the sweet aroma, then grinned. Oh, let's try the roasted nuts over there. They smell amazing. She began moving toward the scent, tugging Ash gently behind her. When she saw a game booth lined with colorful prizes, her eyes lit up with determination and excitement. I want that plush fox. Come on, let's see if I can win it, she laughed, pulling him along with an almost magnetic enthusiasm. Ash followed her with a warm smile, watching her excitement with quiet amusement. Her joy seemed to brighten the space around them, and he let her take the lead, enjoying the simplicity of the moment as much as she did. Meanwhile, at one of the floating islands in the sky, inside one of those manors. Bring me some more ice creams, and all the cold stuff we have, Malicia ordered, her voice playful and demanding. Her maid moved to obey, but a firm hand stopped her. The maid looked up, startled, her face paling slightly at the sight of the one who held her back. Miss Malicia, you need to dress up now. The celebration party is about to start, Naira said firmly, knowing that strictness was the only way to stop Malicia from overindulging in cold sweets. Malicia looked far from her usual composed and elegant self. Her lips were smeared with ice cream, stains marked her hands and clothes, and she wore a simple sleep outfit with her hair slightly tousled. She looked more like a mischievous child caught in the middle of indulgence, pouting rather than crying at being interrupted. But, Sister Naira, no. Get ready immediately or we'll be late. And don't forget, the party will have plenty of ice cream, Naira added, her voice firm but patient, softening the command with a hint of encouragement. Hearing this, Malicia's pout faded, her face lighting up with a small, eager smile. She hurried off to take a quick bath, excitement and anticipation dancing in her eyes. Naira watched her go, a small smile touching her lips, before her expression shifted to one of alertness. A tingling sensation ran through her senses, drawing her gaze to the empty sky outside the window. She stared into the expanse for a long moment, her eyes sharp and calculating. Finally, she blinked and looked away, shaking off the feeling. My mind must be playing tricks on me. She closed the window gently and waited patiently for Malicia to finish. Meanwhile, somewhere in the same space Naira had been observing. Would you look at that? Her senses are surprisingly sharp for a human. A calm voice echoed, tinged with curiosity. Yes, she sensed us. She must be stronger than she appears. Another voice replied, the tone admiring yet cautious. Of course she is. The first voice responded, almost amused. But still, how could she? Don't worry. Are you forgetting about that person? Even he made a mess. So what would you expect any less? That's true. Our role here is just to observe. So let's focus on that, said another voice, steady and deliberate. Right? The first voice agreed, a faint echo of amusement lingering as they watched. Now, why did it have to happen at a time like this? Ethan thought, frustration bubbling in his heart as his eyes wandered to his surroundings. All around him, people dressed in all sorts of elegant outfits savored their drinks while speaking among themselves. Laughter rose here and there, blending with the clinking of glasses, while the faint hum of music gave the whole place an almost dreamlike atmosphere. The huge hall stretched far and wide, decorated with lights and flowing silks, every detail polished with care. It was situated on one of the floating islands, the nearest one to the magic tower, and from the balcony, the entire grandeur of it seemed to open endlessly before him. Leaning back against the edge of the railing, Ethan had the whole hall in his view. The cold wind brushed through his black hair, tugging at the strands, while in one hand he held a drink, sipping absent-mindedly. The Bloodline Awakening Celebration. The awakening of the Ravencroft family's long-slumbering bloodline was supposed to be great news, a blessing for everyone. But for Ethan, it was nothing of the sort. To him, it meant only trouble, because with it came the high possibility that his marriage with Malicia would be annulled. I know Malicia does not want me. So, should I just give up? The thought stung, but he could not accept it. He did not want to. She was the only one who had ever truly filled his heart, the only person he longed for. How could he discard her so easily? Yet now, with the bloodline awakened, everything had shifted beyond his reach. Before this, Malicia had not held enough reason to cancel the engagement on her own. Ethan knew her father well, and he was certain the man would have asked her to reconsider before agreeing to anything. He was not someone who would simply bend to his daughter's request. But now, with her bloodline awakened and the astonishing feat of even helping others in her family awaken theirs along with her father, her words now held value that was undeniable. That reason alone was enough to nullify not just one engagement, but 100 if it came to it. Not that there were so many. It was only this one. There is every chance that she has already spoken with her father, and it might even be announced tonight. Ethan smiled faintly and closed his eyes as the chill of early winter wrapped around him. His heart beat faster in his chest, and though he had trained himself for months to control his breathing, his anger, and his emotions, skills that were the very foundation of an assassin, he was still not perfect enough to suppress the rush of emotions that he felt right now. What an irony. The one who longed to be loved was never chosen, and the one who never wished for it gained it without effort. He turned around, setting his gaze on the vibrant and glowing city far below the floating islands, lights flickering against the horizon. His mind was tangled, thoughts pulling him in different directions, refusing to settle. What was he supposed to do now? He was strong, but there were already two monsters in the academy, figures who overshadowed everyone with their terrifying growth and unnatural strength. Against them, Ethan's own efforts seemed buried, his path clouded by their shadows. And now his love life was in ruins. His engagement was slipping away, even though no one had announced it and no one had told him. But he knew. It was only a matter of time. He had few friends, and those few were tied to the very people he despised the most, leaving him even more alone. His family was the only thing left to him, but he did not want them involved. He did not have that connection with his parents, which should have been normal for others. What a cruel fate I have. He whispered softly, the words barely louder than the wind. Ethan had no one. Only two paths stood before him now. He could accept everything quietly and fade into the background, forgotten and discarded. Or he could take hold of it all with his own hands, bending everything to his will no matter what it cost. to walk the path of a villain. Ethan chuckled softly, though there was no trace of amusement in his eyes. If I became a villain, I would only end up losing even more of the few things I still have. What strange thoughts I am having right now. To love someone deeply is to risk everything, your pride, your peace, your desires. And somehow I still ended up risking it all, only to not be chosen. His voice was low, almost carried away by the cold night breeze. The faint music drifting across the city was beautiful, filling every corner of the floating islands with a festive rhythm. Yet to him it sounded hollow. Each note seemed to push his mood further down, like a weight pressing on his chest, until even breathing felt heavy. He drew a slow breath and reached into his pocket, bringing out a small earpiece. With a practiced motion, he set it into his ear and spoke. "How is everything going?" Ethan asked, his voice stripped of warmth, his tone calm but cold enough to leave no space for hesitation. "It won't lie, sir. It's quite difficult to keep up with him. Every time he teleports, I lose track of his position, and that makes observing him extremely troublesome. Right now, I have even lost him in this dense festival crowd, but I plan on executing the mission today itself. The festival will prove to be the best place to carry it out." Another voice responded, deeper and sterner, carrying the kind of weight that belonged to someone experienced. "I see. So he is already here," Ethan muttered, his eyes narrowing as his grip on the glass tightened slightly. "Well then, try to execute the plan today. Finish it." "Yes, sir. But what about the girl who is always with him?" the voice asked after a brief pause, hesitant yet unwilling to leave the question unsaid. "Alicia." "Huh. Well, let's see. If by chance you succeed in your task, leave her. But if you somehow fail, which I doubt you will, then kill her instead." "Yes, sir." The call ended abruptly. Ethan removed the device and crushed it in his palm without a second thought. The fragments of metal and crystal slipped between his fingers, scattering into the air, before being carried away by the night wind as if they had never existed. For a brief moment, his reflection shimmered faintly in the glass of the balcony door, and he saw the face of someone who had walked too far into shadows to ever return. Everything is set. If Ash survives, then Alicia will die, and he will drown in despair. And if he dies, that is even better. After all, Ash is the reason behind everything. If not for him, all would have been fine. So do not blame me for what I am doing, for I am not a kind person. The thought twisted painfully in his chest, but he swallowed it down, forcing the calm mask back over his face again. With steps measured and steady, Ethan turned away from the balcony and walked inside, blending into the warmth and light of the celebration as though nothing had ever happened. Now, where the hell did he teleport to now? A moving shadow thought, its body slipping from one shadow to another at high speed, carefully surveying the surroundings. TSK. It's too crowded. The person was none other than the assassin hired by Ethan, though the assassin himself was unaware of who had placed the request. There were many places that took on assassination tasks, and one such organization operated from the neutral continent. Naturally, if they were based there, it meant they belonged to a powerful criminal syndicate. Ethan had made sure to keep his identity hidden. He had gone through several layers of connections, arranging everything in a way that, if someone looked into it, all the blame would appear to belong to the organization itself. It would look like nothing more than one of their countless schemes. Even the earpiece Ethan had used was a voice-altering one, making sure his tone and intent could not be traced. Everything was prepared with him remaining in the dark, and those directly involved in the assassination had no idea that he was the one who had instigated it. It was simple in concept, but it had taken time, resources, and careful planning. Money, mana stones, and rare artifacts. These were more than enough to make anyone agree, and Ethan had all of them to use. But none of this mattered to the assassin moving through the shadows. "I should have asked for even more payment. It's practically impossible to catch that bastard." Even as he complained in his thoughts, his eyes kept scanning, and his movements never faltered. His name was Roan, a 5-star assassin, a title given only to those with a flawless record. A 5-star meant 100% success rate, the highest rating possible. Although his rank was only at the Grandmaster stage, his skill far exceeded ordinary standards. He had once assassinated even a legendary ranked figure. For assassins, brute strength was meaningless. The real craft was in speed, precision, and killing the target before they could even react. Ethan had originally wanted someone of even higher rank, perhaps legendary or mythical, but in criminal organizations, people at that level were leaders or vice leaders themselves. Hiring someone of that status without revealing his own identity was simply impossible. So in the end, Roan was chosen. Ashburn really is a headache. From the reports gathered and even the battle footage he had been shown, Roan knew the target was dangerous. Ash had frightening talent and strength, but Roan's confidence did not waver. He was already standing at the peak of the Grandmaster rank, only a step away from breaking through to the next stage. I should speed up. Otherwise, I'll lose him completely. At least it helps that both he and the girl with him attract attention wherever they go. If I ask the right people and look carefully, I might track them down faster. Still hidden in the shadows, he slipped silently through the crowded festival, his presence blending into the darkness. His mind focused solely on the hunt. Amelia POV. All right, I am gonna enjoy today. Amelia thought with a smile on her face as she slowly moved toward the hall where the main party was being conducted, though she was a little later than the given time. But a girl needs at least a little time to get ready. I had to dress up like this. It is also my first time. She had spent most of her childhood with her grandfather, so she was mostly oblivious to dresses and the sense of style a girl should naturally know. Thankfully, Alicia, Grace, Lyra, and even Melissa had guided her, teaching her patiently and helping her shape a better sense for such things. It felt as though they had washed her with that sacred instinct only women carried. It feels a little uncomfortable, but that is because I am not used to it, Amelia consoled herself. In this world, makeup was not used very much, especially not by the awakened. Their skin became as white as snow and clear of all impurities, so they did not need artificial means to correct it. Those who wanted something more relied on potions whose effects were permanent rather than makeup, which only gave a temporary result. However, since such potions were extremely costly, makeup was still used by poorer people. Amelia's discomfort came from the gown and the accessories she wore, as they felt unfamiliar and heavy compared to what she was used to. The gown brushed against her skin with every step, and the ornaments weighed on her slightly, making her more conscious of her movements. Is that the entrance? She thought as she moved toward the large door guarded by two people wearing the insignia of the Ravencroft family, dressed in black and red. As she neared, the massive doors opened automatically with quiet grace. She stepped into the light, immediately drawing every gaze without saying a word. Her gown was a flowing silver white, shining softly as if threads of starlight had been woven into it. The fabric shifted with her movements, catching the glow from every angle and reflecting it in gentle waves. The dress left her shoulders bare, with delicate jeweled clasps fastening the sleeves, while a large satin bow rested against her back, giving her figure an elegant charm. Blue gemstones adorned her ears, her neck, and even her hair, where crystal flowers and silver chains sparkled faintly among her long, dark curls that cascaded smoothly down her back. Her skin was soft and fair like polished porcelain, while her deep blue eyes carried a quiet allure that seemed to linger on anyone who looked for too long. In that moment, she appeared like a vision from a dream, beautiful and untouchable, moving with a grace that felt almost beyond the reach of this world. The crowd stared at her with admiration, their whispers rising like a hushed tide. Some were struck silent, unable to look away, while others leaned toward one another, speaking softly as though their voices might break the spell she carried. Men unconsciously straightened their postures, and women adjusted their gowns in subtle ways, as if to compete, yet none could deny that she stood apart from them all. It's the same as every day. Although she was smiling, she could feel all sorts of emotions bubbling around the people. Most were filled with lust, jealousy, envy, disdain, and many other shades of ill intent. Yet among them, there were still some who shone brighter, showing only admiration and even love. A love, oh my, someone loves me? Her cheeks almost warmed, but she quickly controlled herself. Sigh. I overreacted a little. It's not my first time seeing something like this. Being able to see everyone's emotions had long since become a habit for her, and sometimes she allowed herself to react this way simply for her own amusement. After all, she had good friends who held no bad intentions toward her due to this very ability. Even so, the ability took away some of the joy of exploring the unknown. Seeing emotions as clear colors left little room for mystery, and though she was not entirely numb, there was always a faint emptiness where curiosity should have been. As she moved past one point, most of the people began talking amongst themselves again, though a few still continued to look at her with lingering gazes. Amelia ignored the weight of their stares and focused instead on a pair of familiar faces she had spotted across the hall. So they are already here. She smiled softly and lifted her hand to wave. Standing not too far away were Lyra and Grace, both dressed in gowns that radiated their own kind of allure. Lyra wore a black gown that revealed one of her long, pale legs, a daring style that gave her an almost dangerous kind of charm. Grace, on the other hand, glowed in her white and golden gown, looking like a saintess who had descended straight from the heavens themselves, as if an angel had stepped into the hall, only the wings were missing. You both look like fairies from a fairy tale, Amelia said, her tone light-hearted but sincere as her smile reached her eyes. Oh, come on, you are looking more beautiful than we are, Grace answered quickly, though the faint pink dusting her cheeks betrayed her flustered heart. Around her, Amelia could sense emotions blooming like a flower opening at sunrise, happiness spilling outward. Lyra tilted her head with a small nod. Indeed, we are all looking like fairies, she said, her words spoken with a playful grin. They all laughed at that, their laughter weaving together easily, softening the air around them. Yet through the surface of amusement, Amelia could see more. Beneath Lyra's expression were tangled threads of emotion, relief, happiness, mischief, but buried deep beneath them were sadness and heavier feelings that she kept carefully hidden from everyone else. Looks like a lot has happened with her, Amelia thought quietly, though outwardly she kept her laughter steady, her mask of ease never slipping. She did not know exactly what Lyra was enduring, but she could do nothing more than stay by her side and try to bring her a little comfort, even if only for a brief moment. Life is always full of ups and downs. The cycle never stops, and no one can escape it. What truly mattered was not losing sight of one's goal even in the worst of times. As long as a person kept walking forward with the will to continue, the storm would pass and the light would eventually return, changing both life and the way one lived it. It is always the ones who laugh the most, the ones who joke the loudest, who carry the deepest pain inside. Amelia had come to believe this was true. They continued to chat, drifting from one subject to another, laughter ringing naturally between them, when suddenly, her heart jolted violently, her pulse quickening as if something had seized it. A sharp ache struck her head without warning. Ah! Not again. Her vision flickered, her eyes turning slightly vacant as her body staggered. Hey, are you okay? Come here. Let me give you a quick healing, Grace said, her tone laced with worry as she instinctively stepped closer, light already gathering faintly at her fingertips. But Amelia stopped them both, forcing a rushed smile as she raised her hand. No, it's fine. Something just fell into my eyes. I'll quickly go to the washroom and wash them out. You two continue. Before they could say anything else, she turned and walked quickly toward the women's washroom, her steps brisk and steady despite the growing pain. Once inside, she shut the door firmly behind her and leaned against the wash basin, her breath coming fast and uneven. The pounding in her head worsened, sharp and unrelenting, while one of her eyes began to shift, its natural color fading into a pure molten gold. Within it, a strange will slowly formed, spinning with a steady rhythm, each turn making the pain more unbearable. Why now, damn it? It hurts like hell, and I can't even scream here. She shoved a handkerchief into her mouth, biting down hard to stifle any sound, though the cloth did little to ease the agony. Her vision fractured, as though the world itself was breaking into countless shards of glass, and the throbbing grew so violent it felt like her skull might split apart. Her muffled cry echoed in the small space as her knees nearly gave way beneath her. Then the visions came. Countless images flashed before her eyes, rushing past like a film played at impossible speed. Shapes, faces, landscapes, familiar and unfamiliar all at once, blurred together in an endless storm, overwhelming her mind. She endured it for what felt like forever, though in truth it lasted only 10 minutes. When the visions finally subsided, her eye returned to its normal color, and the wheel disappeared. The handkerchief slipped from her lips as she spat it out, her breath ragged and uneven. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, sweat dampening her skin, as she gripped the edge of the basin just to keep herself from collapsing. Damn it, another one of those damn visions. But they are literally wrong. Everything that is happening is different from what I am seeing. They are just too different. It had started soon after Ash returned to the academy. She did not know why, but from that point onward, visions began to appear more and more often. They came without warning, flooding her mind, and though they seemed vivid, they were all too different from reality. What made them even stranger was that many of those visions were of events that had already happened. But it was different today. I saw a vision of this same festival and everything was too different. Her head was filled with countless fragments of such visions, overlapping until they blurred together. But one thing was always the same. Every vision revolved around Ray. She had seen Alicia with a cold and indifferent personality instead of the kind one she now carried. She had seen the deaths of many students, even Aurora, who was currently alive and laughing in this very world. She had seen demons attacking the academy in great numbers, while in present times, there were no attacks at all. She had seen Ray's growth becoming much slower than it was now, and in other moments, she saw him obtaining strange natural treasures and growing powerful in an instant. There were countless variations, so many that she could not even keep a list in her mind. Every event that had already happened appeared again in her visions, but always with a completely different outcome, as though she was being forced to watch an endless string of alternatives that had never come to pass. What is happening with me? At first, she had been happy, believing that the golden wheel-like eye she awakened was the same as her grandfather's. But that joy quickly faded when she realized the eye only appeared whenever these memories forced themselves into her mind, leaving behind nothing but pain and confusion. Still, it does not make any sense. There was no Ash at all. Even this time, he did not appear once. Don't tell me that my guess is right? That was the second common thing she noticed, the complete absence of Ash Burn from every vision. No matter what she saw, he was missing entirely, as if his existence had been erased. That absence alone raised countless questions and endless possibilities. And the most possible reason she believed was that the present is the present of the changed future, and the memories I am seeing is that of the unchanged future, or the supposed to be present. It is more like Ash Burn did not exist at all and he only exists here in this timeline or this present, which changes all the future, thus making him the anomaly. The same anomaly grandfather was finding. She let out a faint sigh. She had already told the Whisperer that Ash was the anomaly he had been searching for, and from the surprised look he gave her, it became clear that even he had not expected her to discover it so quickly. That expression had confirmed it. He already knew Ash was the anomaly. Yet instead of giving her answers, he simply asked her to enjoy her school life as much as possible and not to burden herself with thoughts of Ash. On the contrary, he had even encouraged her to grow closer to him. I am not going to tell him about these visions now. If they are really the visions of the original world and not the current world that was changed by the anomaly named Ash Burn, then I want to know what happened to the original world too. Looking at herself in the mirror, she gently fixed her hair and adjusted the accessories that had shifted out of place during the strain. Her reflection looked steady, though a trace of unease lingered in her eyes. Though the vision I saw today, was it really supposed to go like this? Really? I cannot believe Ray was like this. In the vision Amelia saw, the version of Ray was older than the current Ray. That alone implied that originally, the bloodline awakening of the Ravencroft family was meant to happen much later in the future. That means The future has changed, and the only thing that could change the future is Ashburn, or maybe some sort of butterfly effect caused by him. Amelia thought about it carefully, but what weighed more heavily on her mind was the shocking scene of Ray and Melissa getting engaged. Was that how things were supposed to happen? She felt uncertain because, in her inherited memories, even Alicia, Grace, and some others had shown clear signs of closeness with Ray. Does that mean Ray formed a harem with all the girls around him? The thought left her uneasy. She could not imagine Grace, Lyra, Melissa, or even Alicia being so deeply in love with Ray that they would agree to something like that. Nor could she picture Ray himself choosing such a path. I think I am glad that future changed. What she did not know was that even she had been included in that list of harem members. If she were to discover this truth, her reaction would surely be a sight to see. But another thought crept into her mind soon after. But does he even know about it? She wondered whether Ash was aware of the changes his very existence was causing, though knowing her grandfather, it was entirely possible that he had already made Ash aware of it. Still caught in those tangled thoughts, Amelia left the washroom. She adjusted her dress and smoothed her hair, hiding away the storm in her mind, and returned to the others with complicated feelings weighing heavily on her heart. Time continued to pass as more and more guests arrived for the celebration party. The large hall filled quickly, and even the crowd gathered outside the academy grew thicker by the minute. Irvin, Lyra, Ethan, Grace, Ray, and many of their classmates had already arrived, along with Vice Principal Elva, several teachers, and many others from different walks of life. The atmosphere was a mix of warmth and anticipation, yet among the festival crowd, there were also those who had come with darker intentions. Some came only to witness the rise of the ancient fallen family, while some came with the purpose of assassination. With guests from every side now present, it was finally time for the true host of the event to appear. Ring! 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 A clear chime rang across the grand hall, its echo sharp and commanding, making every voice fall silent. All eyes turned upward toward the source of the sound. From the second floor, standing tall at the height of the balcony, a figure gazed down at them with a calm and confident smile. Wearing an elegant ensemble of crimson and white, the head of the Ravencroft family, St. Lucan, revealed himself at last. His voice, deep and resonant yet filled with pride, carried through every corner of the vast hall. High above, the skies lit up with a holographic projection, showing the same scene to the entire city so that no one would miss this moment. The festival itself seemed to pause, holding its breath as St. Lucan began to speak. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. With a wide smile and a chest full of pride, his words thundered warmly through the hall, and his voice only grew stronger as he continued to address the gathered crowd. I, Lucan Ravencroft, the head of the Ravencroft family, the Tower Master of the Magic Tower, and a saint of humanity, welcome you all on this auspicious occasion. It is a moment of pride for me that our long-slumbering bloodline has finally awakened, giving humanity a much-needed boost in strength against all types of threats. A loud cheer rose from below, filled with shouts of joy and congratulations that echoed so powerfully they seemed to reach the skies themselves, without the need for any sound transmitters. With the same proud smile, Lucan lifted his hand and gestured toward the great bonfire blazing at the center of the city. You can see the large bonfire burning in the heart of the city, and the miracle it is performing. This fire will continue for the entire duration of the festival, for those are my flames. The flames of Nirvana. As long as you bathe in them, your injuries will vanish and your bodies will be restored as though new. Consider it a small gift I offer to everyone. It is the least I can do. The crowd's cheer, already loud enough to shake the ground, grew even louder, reaching a pitch where it felt as though the entire city was roaring. For many of them, this miracle was not simply something to celebrate but something life-changing. Parents and loved ones who had been lying on their deathbeds were suddenly healed and stood strong once again. Retired military officers, who had lived for years with amputated limbs, found their long-lost arms and legs restored to them. It was a moment that would remain etched in their hearts forever. Inside the grand hall, Most of the nobles and esteemed guests had not descended into the streets, and many were unaware of the healing power of the flames. When they finally realized what those below were experiencing, a loud wave of gasps swept through the audience. Shock and awe painted every expression, their disbelief almost tangible in the air. Lucan chuckled softly, aware of how many among them secretly wished to rush out and step into those flames themselves after hearing the thunderous cries of the people below. Yet, standing here before a saint, none dared to move from their place. His eyes slowly swept over the hall, pausing only briefly before narrowing slightly. So, he did not come. What an arrogant brat. The thought pressed against him, leaving a faint irritation. Ash had not even shown him the basic courtesy of honoring his invitation, and though it angered him, Lucan knew this was a joyous occasion, and he could not allow his face to betray such emotions. To him, Ash was not of great importance, but he also knew how highly his own master regarded the boy. That alone was enough reason to keep his mind cautious, for if his master saw promise in Ash, then one day he might truly become a being beyond imagination. Lucan wished to form a bond with him if fate allowed, though it seemed that chance would not come today. Raising his hands lightly, Lucan called for silence, and the roaring hall obeyed without hesitation. One by one, the voices quieted until all focus returned to him. And many of you may not know, but all this became possible only because of my one and only daughter, Malicia Ravencroft. It was she who uncovered the final barrier that had long kept our bloodline from awakening. If credit belongs anywhere, it belongs solely to her, Malicia Ravencroft, heir to the Ravencroft estate and the Magic Tower itself. His voice swelled with pride as he stretched his hand toward the grand staircase. So, let us welcome the true star of this festival. Let us welcome my one and only daughter. The lights of the hall dimmed at once, casting the vast chamber in a soft glow as the sound of deliberate footsteps echoed clearly, each step carrying weight and intent. Every head turned toward the source, the anticipation in the air growing heavier with every passing moment. Even the crowd outside, roaring only a moment ago as they watched through the holographic projection in the sky, quieted in unison, as though the entire city had collectively held its breath. Even without a spotlight, the hall grew brighter as flames sprouted in midair, dancing softly and illuminating the space. Their glow was not blinding but warm, enhancing the beauty of the girl who had just entered, as if the flames themselves existed only for her. Malicia walked with small, deliberate steps, her every movement carrying an elegance that could not be taught. The fire-red waves of her hair cascaded down her back in loose curls, the flickering flames weaving through them and making them shimmer like molten rubies. Her skin was fair, her features finely balanced, and her composure carried a natural grace that needed no ornament to draw the eye. Her gown was crafted from deep black silk, flowing in layered folds that shifted like water, catching and reflecting the light with every step. Embroidered patterns of muted gold, green, and crimson spread across the fabric like scattered petals, subtle yet vivid enough to add depth to its darkness. The bodice fit close, with a low neckline that rose into a high lace collar at her throat, both daring and dignified at once. Long sheer sleeves draped down her arms, their transparent fabric carrying the same delicate embroidery as the gown. The skirt trailed behind her, its hem brushing against the polished floor. It carried enough weight to whisper with each step, yet it still moved with a fluid grace that made it seem lighter than it was. Her eyes, burning like pieces of ember, carried an intensity that drew in everyone present, as if they had no choice but to meet her gaze. The hall grew utterly silent. No one could deny it. She carried an unmatched presence, whether because it was her family's celebration or because of the awakened power of her bloodline. Her beauty and elegance left every heart captivated. "Why are we not going there? I thought we came here just for that," Alicia asked while staring at the holographic screen that displayed Malicia's entry. Her face was filled with confusion, her brows drawn slightly as she tried to understand. Ash looked at her and replied, "You remember how she hurt you so badly during the exam, and you still want to go there? We came here just to enjoy the festival. Let's not bother with the party. His voice was steady but carried a quiet sternness, making his refusal clear. Deep inside, he had no desire to meet anyone tonight. If he did, he feared he might end up doing something impulsive. Alicia sighed with a hint of bitterness, her expression softening into something almost vulnerable. Seeing this, Ash pulled her gently closer and asked in a calmer voice, "What happened? Do you really want to go there?" I thought her kindness had faded a little. Is it returning again? Ash wondered in confusion. Alicia shook her head lightly and said, "No, it's not that. I wanted to dance with you there, in front of everyone else. I wanted to experience that, nothing else." A faint reddish hue rose across her cheeks as she buried her face in Ash's chest, her shyness clear. Ash smiled, warmth spreading in his heart. They were standing on the rooftop of a tall building, high above the noise of the festival. The night sky stretched endlessly above them, and for a moment, it felt as though the world below no longer existed. Her warmth seeped into him, and his body grew hotter, his desire already burning high. He had been barely keeping it under control, but Alicia's words and her small act of closeness now broke down the restraint he had left. Lifting her face gently, he leaned down and kissed her. He devoured her lips as though he had hungered for them for centuries, tasting her like she was the sweetest thing he had ever known. His body heated further, and the distance between them disappeared until only her warmth filled him. Yet while they were lost in the moment, someone watched them from afar, hidden and silent. The person's eyes lingered on the pair, and a thought stirred in the depths of his mind. There they are, all alone. Better for me. It is the perfect moment to carry the plan forward. It's my chance, Roan thought as he saw both Ash and Alicia getting lost in each other. He did not bother with what they were doing. To him, it was nothing more than a perfect moment to strike, and that was all that mattered. They already made my task easier by being away from the crowd. He was still in the form of a shadow, his figure formless and without features, but if he had a face right now, it would surely be smiling. He closed the distance between them swiftly, his movement silent as he reached the same rooftop. With a wave of intent, he summoned something, and a shadowy arm rose from the roof, catching it in its grasp. It was a cube-shaped artifact, something he had borrowed from his organization, the Ebon Court. The Ebon Court was once not considered a criminal organization, but as time passed and they began taking contracts to kill anyone in exchange for money and resources, the title was eventually forced upon them. Unlike the assassin organizations and families who were tied to humanity and carried out missions in service of the greater good, the Ebon Court made no such distinction. They did not hesitate to kill their fellow humans. They killed for money. They killed for resources, or simply for profit. For a 5-star assassin like Roan, borrowing such an artifact was nothing unusual. When it came to assassinations, there was always the chance that the target would remain in public, surrounded by witnesses, which made the mission far more complicated. Because of this, most 4- and 5-star assassins were provided with space isolation artifacts, objects designed to cut off a small area from its surroundings, creating a sealed space without disturbing the outside world. Those ranked higher than Grandmaster did not need such things, since they possessed their own domains. A domain, even if it was a normal one, was still a domain. Assassins ranked below 4 stars, however, were never entrusted with such artifacts. Their chances of success were low, and the loss of something so rare and difficult to craft was not worth the risk. Roan activated the artifact, and it pulsed in his hand. White zigzagging lines appeared across its surface, flickering and weaving together, before the cube expanded in the blink of an eye. In the next instant, the solid object turned transparent, spreading outward until it covered the entire rooftop in an invisible barrier. Ash felt something pass through his body, sharp and unsettling, and his instincts immediately flared with warning. He was so engrossed in the sweetness of Alicia's lips just a moment ago that he had not thought about anything else. But now the atmosphere around him shifted and forced his focus to return. Eclipse blinked into existence, landing firmly in his grasp, and at the same moment, a violet shield spread around him, enclosing both him and Alicia in its protective glow. Alicia, sensing through Ash's abrupt reaction that something was wrong, tried to pull herself free, but Ash drew her firmly against his chest with one arm, holding her still, refusing to let her move. "Who is it?" Ash's eyes narrowed as he ignored Alicia's struggling, his entire mind slipping into high alert. With Omni thought activated and his will spreading outward, his senses sharpened until every ripple of energy around him could be felt. If he had been alone, he would not have cared much about what was happening. But Alicia was with him right now, and that changed everything. The sensation pressing against his instincts was eerily familiar, reminiscent of what he had felt when the demons attacked the academy. It's a space isolation artifact, the same suffocating feeling of being cut away from the world pressed down on him, a distinct sense of separation that could not be mistaken. He could still see everything as it was. The rooftop remained beneath his feet, the stars stretched above, and in the distance, the hologram still showed St. Lucan speaking proudly to the crowds. Yet no sound reached his ears, and he was certain that from outside, this rooftop looked like any other rooftop. We are cut off from the space, it's an isolated space. Somewhat similar to what the demons did, but little inferior to it. Ash's thoughts ran quickly. No attack had come yet, even though an entire minute had already passed, but he had no doubt this was the prelude to one. Is it an assassin? Names and possibilities raced through his head. Demons, Ray, saints, even the elves. He trusted no one, and so he weighed them all carefully. But as he analyzed the situation, only one name surfaced clearly in his mind. Ethan Nightshade. A sharp glint flickered in his eyes. He had already expected Ethan to make a move. After all, in the novel, Ethan had attacked Ray in the same way, so this was not surprising at all. I need to drop Elzai at some safe place. Just then, his awareness finally registered Alicia's voice breaking through the storm of thoughts in his head. "Me fight. Release me. I can also fight." Her expression was fierce, her eyes calm despite the urgency in her voice, and in her hand she had already summoned a blade. The sharpness of her gaze told him she was ready, even if her face trembled slightly with emotion. Thoughts stormed within him. Inside a space isolation artifact, the surroundings are separated from reality. The ground and everything destroyed within it will vanish once the artifact is retrieved. The demon's version had been far more dangerous, capable of allowing interaction with mirrored versions of reality, though not the real objects themselves. Sometimes, however, those attacks had still reached the real world if certain conditions were met. Ash pressed down slightly with his legs, and when the rooftop beneath him remained unbroken, the confirmation he needed settled clearly in his thoughts. I need some distractions. Oh right, I had those too. He recalled something he had purchased long ago but never found a chance to use. Now it finally had a purpose. With a single thought, he summoned it from his soul space, and the item burst forth. Smoke erupted instantly, expanding in a thick wave that cloaked the entire rooftop in a dense curtain. Using the smoke bomb as cover, Ash tightened his hold on Alicia and vanished into the shroud. The coldness in his eyes did not lessen in the slightest. Instead, it deepened further, his expression hardening until every trace of warmth was erased. His aura shifted completely, cold and chilling, as if he had returned once again to the emotionless days of the Dragon Continent. As the ground changed from roof tiles to the soft touch of grass, Ash finally released Alicia. She said nothing, yet her eyes spoke with 1,000 unspoken words. They were wide and shimmering faintly with unshed tears, holding a depth of emotions she could not voice. Shock, sorrow, anger, and anguish swirled together, but Ash forced himself to feel nothing. He built walls inside his heart and mind with the help of the Soul Library, allowing only cold clarity to remain, for he did not wish to act under the influence of emotions. Stay here, I will return in a few minutes. Also, enter that hall. No one will be able to harm you then. Although his tone carried an icy calm, the warmth hidden behind his words was not completely erased, and Alicia caught a faint glimpse of it. Yet she could not even bring herself to register it clearly, because inside her chest, emotions raged like a storm. There was anger that burned, sadness that weighed on her, anguish that tore her apart, and a biting self-hatred that gnawed at her pride. She felt powerless and weak, convinced that all the training she had poured herself into had been meaningless in the end. I wanted to fight along with him. Her hands clenched tightly, nails pressing into her palms, but even through the haze of emotions, she still understood. If the enemy had been someone she could have handled, Ash would never have brought her here, beside the great hall where all sorts of guests were present, enjoying the party. They were on one of the floating islands, high above the city, with the moonlight spilling down on them. Inside the hall were powerful figures, saints and other awakened of lower ranks, people with strength far beyond ordinary humans. Ash knew no one would dare harm her there, and that was the reason he had chosen this place. Don't worry about me, you know I can't die. He was about to teleport away when he felt a sudden tug at his clothes. Alicia was holding on to him with trembling hands, her head lowered, her voice barely more than a whisper, though every word carried the weight of her heart. Being not able to die doesn't mean you will act recklessly. Please, take care of yourself. Return safe and return fast. Her plea hung in the air, raw and desperate. Ash paused for a moment, long enough for his silence to become an answer, before he assured her with a faint nod and teleported away. Left alone outside the hall, surrounded by the garden of the floating island, she stood beneath the cold silver light of the moon. I hate myself. I hate my luck. Why can't I become strong fast? I hate everything. The words echoed inside her as the moonlight wrapped around her figure. Her thoughts began to blur, her mind falling blank, while her body responded instinctively to the burning desire within her heart. The flames of obsession demanded growth, forcing her into a trance. Her body glimmered faintly, her outline touched by a subtle glow as if the moon itself was breathing life into her. And then, like a ghost appearing from nowhere, a figure stood beside her, watching silently, confusion flickering in their thoughts. What's she doing here? And wait, is she in a trance again? All of this, from the moment Ash threw the smoke bomb to the instant he placed Alicia on the floating island and returned, had taken no more than 15 to 20 seconds. By the time he reappeared, the smoke on the rooftop was already thinning, its veil beginning to fade. On time, Ash thought as his gaze fell upon the dissolving haze. He had used it precisely, concealing from the assassin the truth that he could teleport outside of a space isolation artifact. Logically speaking, teleporting outside from an isolated space was impossible. But runes were born to break rules, and nothing could stop the power of a rune except for another rune. Now that Alicia was safe, a heavy weight was lifted from his shoulders, though he repeated to himself with cold certainty, "She is not a burden." Yet there was still one thing that unsettled him, a question that tugged at the edge of his awareness. Why is no one attacking me? Silence filled the surroundings. Ash stood there, dressed in the same red and black outfit, Eclipse resting firmly in his hands, his eyes filled with nothing but coldness. What's the assassin waiting for? He could sense nothing at all. There was no presence on the rooftop, no shift of aura, not even the faintest ripple of intent. Only the shadows and the glow of scattered lights of the festival. The only reason I can't feel anyone must be because the assassin is stronger than me. Even knowing that, Ash had no intention of stepping back. He was not someone who would ever retreat from a fight. Fear did not exist in his heart, and hesitation never crossed his mind. What filled him instead was the simple will to fight and the sharper will to kill. He waited. A minute passed, and then another, yet no attack came. Ash remained still, though his instincts told him something had shifted. The air was no longer the same. There was a faint difference in its texture, subtle but undeniable. After the incident with the Hollow Mother, his instincts were really sensitive, especially towards the tiniest disturbances carried within the air. That same instinct now warned him. He activated elemental sight, and immediately he saw them, green particles slowly spreading around him. They were faint, invisible to the naked eye, but unmistakable. Poison. The particles were mixing with the natural mana in the air, and as they combined, the reaction quickened, expanding outward with unnatural speed, as if feeding on the mana itself. So, that's what the plan was. Ash's lips curved into a cold, chilling smile. But it was not the poison that amused him, nor the process of its spread. What made him smile was the trail he could see through his vision, the faint thread of origin, leading back to a spot drowned in shadows. Where is the girl? Roan narrowed his eyes, unsettled by how quickly Ash had reacted. He had not expected his senses to be this sharp, nor his response this immediate. He summoned his sword, raised a mana shield in an instant, then the smoke bomb, and after that, the girl vanished. The sequence frustrated him. There were only two possibilities, yet both should have been impossible. The first was that Ash had teleported out of the isolated space with some ancient or rare artifact, leaving the girl in safety. The second was that he had used an artifact capable of storing living beings, placing the girl inside it. Either way, the smoke had concealed the truth, leaving no way to determine which possibility was real and which was false. Even so, Roan leaned toward the second option. If Ash had an artifact that allowed him to break free of spatial isolation, then he would not still be standing here now, calmly awaiting the next move. Unconsciously, Roan felt his heartbeat quicken. Greed rose from the depths of his chest, sharp and unrelenting. He had never heard of an artifact capable of storing living things. The possibilities of such an item were beyond imagination. What a lucky day. If he carries something like that, then there must be countless other secrets about him as well. Perhaps he stumbled upon an ancient legacy. That would explain his strength. But then he noticed Ash. That smile. A chill crept along his spine. For a brief moment, he felt as though Ash's gaze had pierced directly through the shadows and fixed upon him, stripping away every layer of concealment. The poison spread silently within the isolated space. Roan himself was unaffected, the antidote flowing through his veins, and his plan remained unchanged. He intended to let the poison weaken Ash slowly, and only if it failed would he reveal himself. Yet now, with that smile aimed straight at him, unease stirred, and then Ash vanished. Appearing a short distance away from Roan's position, Eclipse gleamed with violet mana as a downward slash cut through the air towards him. But who was Roan? He was a Grandmaster with 3 stats, strength, agility, and stamina, each at 600 points. The very peak of what a Grandmaster could ever reach. He reacted in an instant. His body slid out from the shadows like water finding its course, and he countered without hesitation. In his hands he carried 2 long daggers, pitch black in color, their surfaces covered with a faint, wavering aura of shadows that made them seem alive. Clang! The impact rang out sharp and heavy, forcing Ash to skid across the invisible ground of the isolated space while Roan himself was pushed 2 steps back. Strong, Ash thought, his eyes narrowing. He could clearly feel the enormous amount of mana radiating from the assassin in front of him. Judging by that alone, this man was most likely around Grandmaster rank. The assassin's attire was exactly what one would expect from his kind. Black clothes that blended into the darkness, a hood concealing most of his head, and a half-mask covering his face up to the nose, leaving only his black eyes visible. Those eyes looked like voids, empty and unfeeling, fixed entirely on him. He has awakened aura. That means he has at least mastered 3 forms of weapon arts. And with that shadow trick he used to appear out of nowhere, he is dangerous. If it were anyone else... Ash's lips curved upward, his smile widening as his excitement grew. He had been disappointed earlier when he couldn't fight even a single Lord Beast in the Untamed Forest, but right now someone had come to him of their own accord. I won't hold back. In truth, Ash was only at Adept rank. His growth in raw stats had stagnated for quite some time. He did not know why. His potential was at Grandmaster rank, and his growth should be faster, not lower. Ash had made up his mind that if this continued, he would have to take some extreme measures. But even after that, Ash did not stop. Instead of wasting time dwelling on it, He had been pouring his efforts into training, making his weapon arts, sharpening his control over mana, polishing his skills until each one became second nature. He was creating new spells, experimenting, pushing himself through practice after practice. There was not just one way to become strong. And right now, what he wanted most was to test himself, to measure how far he had come by crossing blades with someone powerful. All right, come on. Let's see how strong I've become after attaining the first stage of weapon mastery. With that thought burning in him, Ash flooded his body with mana, enhancing every muscle and nerve until his entire frame seemed to hum with energy. He took a basic sword stance, grounding himself, then rushed towards Roan, lightning crackling faintly in his wake. He chose not to use Transcendent Step or any of the other spells in his arsenal. He wanted to test whether his sword alone could cut down this assassin. It was not arrogance. It was not blind overconfidence. It was a conviction born from belief in his own progress. Even if he died in the process, he felt that it would still be worth it. Nor that he could die. A dangerous mindset, one that carried the scent of recklessness, almost bordering on a suicidal tendency. Clang! Clang! The sharp music of steel rang again and again as swords and daggers collided, filling the isolated space with their sound. Their movements blurred, bodies darting and twisting at speeds that strained the eye, lunging and pressing against each other, as though each strike was meant to consume the other's existence. Ash relied only on his sword techniques. He parried with precise timing, created openings through feints, slashed with sharp intent, and pierced with calculated thrusts. His footwork shifted constantly, his body weaving through the air with bursts of sudden speed. At times, his form glowed with different colors as mana surged, making him unnaturally flexible, striking from angles that seemed almost impossible for a human body to achieve. The continuous clashing and ringing of weapons echoed like a rhythm that neither fighter intended to end. Ash felt his body move on its own, responding faster than his thoughts, instincts sharpened to their limit. His control over his own body had never been better, and it allowed him to counter strike after strike from Roan's daggers. Yet there was something else within the clash, a subtle presence that was easy to miss. There was formless poison drifting unseen, invisible to the naked eye yet still weaving through the air. It was a poison that killed without any pain, leaving no warning signs to the victim. That was the only reason Ash had not noticed its intrusion, even as it quietly seeped into his body, though it was neutralized as soon as it entered his bloodstream. But even though he parried the attacks and even counterattacked, Ash's body carried visible wounds from the fight. His clothes were torn, and cuts could be seen clearly on his skin. The blood was not flowing, but the marks of battle remained, raw and undeniable. The same was also true for Roan, though his injuries were far less severe, almost negligible in comparison. Ash's stats were around 400, while Roan's three core stats, strength, agility, and stamina, were at 600. The difference between them was obvious, and that was without taking into account the gap in their skill. Yes, this is the gap, Ash thought as he created distance between them. His body began to heal at a speed visible to the eye, torn skin stitching back together, the damage fading with every passing second. It was then that Roan spoke for the first time. You have quite a rare trait of healing, something not even mentioned in the information I received. His voice was cold, carrying a sharp edge that felt almost chilling, though hidden beneath it was a faint trace of surprise. Ash breathed slowly, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, before replying, "Nobody knows, because I killed everyone who knew about it." In truth, it was a bluff. Yet Ash understood that intimidation was also a weapon, just as sharp as the blade he held. From their earlier clash, he had already judged the difference in skill, and he knew this opponent was not one to underestimate. He had already stepped into the first stage of weapon mastery, but to reach the second, he would need to make a sword art. After all, he wanted something that was suitable for him, something he was still exploring. Which meant there was no longer any point in holding back. Yeah, let's end this. Otherwise, Alicia will get worried over nothing. He tested his sword against a strong enemy, feeling the familiar weight and the faint change in his control, and he was satisfied. His heart longed to fight longer, to learn more through each exchange, but dragging this out now would serve no purpose. As that thought settled, an unseen pressure spread out from his body, filling the isolated space. It was heavy, oppressive, and it twisted the air as though the space itself was bowing beneath its weight. For the first time in a long while, Ash let the aura of his primordial cores run wild. Hume! What the hell is this? Roan thought as he felt a presence vaster than anything he had ever encountered. His body began to tremble under that ancient force radiating out from Ash, a pressure that seeped into his very bones, making his instincts scream at him to run. How? Even then, he was an assassin. He had been trained to endure all kinds of torture, and one part of that training was resisting the unnatural fear that could break a man's will. His heart pounded wildly, but he forced his mind to gather itself, his willpower holding against the storm pressing on him. His body reacted on instinct, his daggers rising just in time to block. Ash had appeared out of nowhere, his sword already descending in a heavy strike. The attack carried a strange weight. It was not only strength, but something deeper, as if the strike itself bore down with the pressure of the mountains. When the blades met, Roan's bones rattled from the impact, his insides churned, and pain surged through his arms. He had managed to block it, but barely. Before he could catch his breath, Ash disappeared again. Roan's senses flared as he spun, his daggers coated with shadow aura, and with the momentum of the turn, he put everything into his counter, aiming for Ash, who had appeared behind him. But as his eyes fell on what stood there, his pupils widened like saucers. What? There was no Ash. Instead, a seething sphere of lightning floated in the air, its surface alive with tendrils that lashed out dangerously. Some burned violet, while others were unnaturally black, like tendrils of death. Suddenly, another presence appeared behind Roan. Shit! His dagger was already moving toward the lightning ball, and his body, weakened under the suffocating pressure of Ash's primordial aura, finally felt the full grip of fear. I have to stop it. I caught him. Ash's thoughts were calm as he appeared near Roan. Only a minute ago, he had been struggling to push him back with nothing but swordplay. Now, after lifting the restrictions he had placed on himself, he had already cornered the veteran assassin. The crackling sphere before Roan was the result of endless practice, a lightning spell into which he had forced a small measure of death mana. It was not perfect, but a rough fusion between two elements. Ash had long sought a true merging, but it had not yet succeeded. Even so, lightning and death had shown an unexpected compatibility, allowing him to force them together if only partially. The result was unstable but deadly. The black lightning ball held power far greater than an ordinary lightning ball spell, carrying with it a killing property. While actually ending the life of a living being required several strict conditions, the danger of the spell could not be denied. Now, with the sphere closing in from the front and his own sword cutting upward in a diagonal slash from behind, Roan was completely cornered. Time seemed to slow. For Ash, who was moving under Omni-Thought, time was already slowed to a crawl. He could see everything clearly. Roan's dagger was almost upon the sphere, yet Ash did not detonate it. If it exploded now, Roan might still survive. If the fusion had been complete, that would have been his choice, but as it was, he needed the blade to finish it. But then, within that stretched moment, something unexpected happened. Roan's body moved in a way that made Ash's eyes narrow. One hand pushed toward the lightning ball, his foot pressed into the ground for balance, and his other arm shifted toward Ash. At first, Ash thought it was to counter the slash, but no. The assassin was bringing his arm between Ash's sword and his own body, and then suddenly the shadow beneath his feet stirred and came alive. They enveloped his foot and, with a violent pull, hurled him high into the air. The throw was powerful enough that both his daggers and eclipse missed the lightning ball and his body by a hair's breadth. Spinning through the air, his balance broken, Roan had no control over his movements. Ash, watching carefully, willed his destructive creations to move. He sent Eclipse flying towards Roan, who was still midair, and at the same time guided the incomplete black lightning ball after him. Eclipse reached first, its sharp edge slicing the air with speed, but Roan managed to avoid it by tilting his head slightly. The sword passed dangerously close, grazing the space beside his cheek, and his focus instantly shifted to the ball of lightning rushing toward him. In that brief moment, he steadied himself in the air as though taking a stance, gathering his strength for something. His muscles tightened, his daggers gleamed faintly, and it was clear he was preparing to unleash a counterattack. But before he could act, Ash appeared behind him. Catching Eclipse with practiced ease, he twisted his body midair and kicked Roan straight toward the lightning ball. That was the last thing Roan had expected. Boom! The explosion rang out, shaking the air itself. A battered figure was thrown violently from the blast, its body spinning helplessly before it crashed down. Thud! Ash landed lightly and began to walk toward the unmoving body. His steps were calm, slow, and deliberate. There was no need to rush. He still wished to test more, and the fight was not yet over. The assassin's body remained face down, stomach pressed against the ground. No sound of breathing came, no sign of life could be felt. Blood pooled slowly from his wounds, spreading across the dirt. Some injuries were deep and ragged. Others carried a strange black burn, twisted and unpleasant to look at. But who was Ash? He was not someone who could be deceived by such a simple trick. He himself had mastered the art of deception, and he knew better than anyone how easily it could be used. To him, this act was far too shallow to work. As he neared the corpse, Roan's body melted into the shadows and lunged upward, a dagger striking straight for Ash's heart. Ash, expecting this all along, raised his blade and parried the strike without effort. Clang! What the hell is happening with me? For the first time, Roan felt a sense of unease he could not suppress. When he had attacked Ash at the beginning, everything had been within expectations. Given their difference in stats and skill, the outcome had been nothing unusual. But the moment that ancient presence spilled from Ash's body, everything changed. The most unsettling part was Ash's sudden use of magic. Not only that, his swordsmanship was precise, refined, and overwhelming. Even though it was only the basics, Roan convinced himself that Ash must be a mage and that the strength in his body and blade was due to the legacy he had acquired. Perhaps it was the same legacy that had given him the strange artifact capable of storing living beings. If he could kill Ash, everything would be his. Yet the reality before him was harsh. Though he had managed to escape Ash's attempt to corner him, he had still suffered the full blow of that unstable lightning ball. The damage it caused now weighed on his body, leaving him gravely injured. And all of it had happened in just a few seconds. Clang! Clang! Damn it, it was a bluff. Roan gritted his teeth in frustration. An assassin was trained never to let emotions surface in battle, but this time the anger burned too hot to be contained. The golden aura that had shaken the entire space was nothing more than a trick. It had not increased Ash's strength at all. At first, he thought it did, but as he exchanged more blows with Ash, he realized that suffocating pressure was only there to cloud judgment, to give the illusion of overwhelming power. It was nothing but a distraction. And because of that, Roan had taken injuries he should have been able to avoid. If not for that false sense of dread, he would have reacted properly, and the fight would not have reached this point. The humiliation cut deep. To be deceived and hurt so badly by someone he still believed was weaker than him was unbearable. His rage boiled over. All of his fury poured into his killing intent, and the aura of his daggers grew darker, sharper, more violent. Shadow Dagger Art. First form. His daggers and his whole body moved with a flurry of speed, leaving behind faint afterimages in the air. Most of the attacks were either parried or blocked by Ash, but still, many strikes landed, carving into his flesh and leaving holes across his body. Each wound healed with visible speed, yet even that constant regeneration could not erase the sharp sting of Roan's relentless onslaught. But Roan did not stop. He did not possess a wide range of skills, only two in total, and both had been gained through skill books. That was simply how he was. He never cared for collecting many techniques or experimenting with a variety. He only kept what was truly useful, what suited him perfectly. And right now, he called upon one of them. Debt of Blood. The moment it activated, a cruel curse spread through Ash's body. Every successful strike forced his wounds to bleed endlessly, the flow of blood refusing to stop until the enemy was dead. The skill constantly drained Roan's mana to maintain itself, but he had an artifact that supplied him with a steady stream of energy. Because of that, he could keep this ability active for hours without fear of exhaustion. As his daggers bit into Ash again and again, crimson welled from each wound. The cuts closed rapidly, flesh knitting back together. But just as the final layer of skin was about to form, it broke open once more. The unseen force of the skill tore it apart, making blood spill uncontrollably, no matter how quickly Ash regenerated. Yes, that's what I was talking about. Roan's eyes glimmered with a sharp light as he watched the endless flow of blood. Ash, however, remained calm. He did not even glance at the injuries, because he knew his blood was without end, sustained by the rune of life within him. Instead of worrying about the bleeding, his entire focus was on reading Roan's rhythm and intercepting the flurry of attacks that pressed him harder with every second. Then, in an instant, Ash vanished from his spot. His body flickered out of sight, and in his place, dozens of crackling spheres of lightning appeared at once. They swelled violently, filling the air with a dangerous hum, before they exploded without delay. Boom! 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 The explosions roared one after another, shaking the isolated space and drowning it in blinding light and deafening thunder. Boom! Boom! The deafening cracks of thunder rolled across the ground, each blast shaking the space as lightning slithered like serpents, splitting and scattering in every direction. The air reeked of ozone, sharp and burning, as the explosions faded into silence. That was close, Roan thought, his figure gliding through the shadows. At the very last moment, he had merged with them, letting the darkness swallow him whole. Only that had saved him from the chain of explosions that tore apart the space where he had stood. His mind was steady, sharpened to a killing edge. Although he usually showed little emotion, right now he was nothing less than a predator in his prime, a full-fledged assassin who lived only for the strike. Yet, beneath that calm, there was a trace of confusion gnawing at him. Why is the poison not working on this bastard? The formless poison was one of the deadliest in the world, a rare toxin feared even by the strongest. Almost no one knew its cure, and those who did could be counted on a single hand. The thought that it had failed here was unsettling, though he forced the unease down and kept moving. Slipping deeper into the shadows, Roan widened the distance between them. The battlefield was unnaturally clear, without a trace of dust or debris, since this was an isolated space. Nothing obscured his sight, and yet the emptiness pressed against him. Ash was nowhere to be seen. Where did he go now? Roan extended his senses outward, his awareness crawling over every inch of the battlefield. But there was nothing. No breath, no ripple of energy. It was as if Ash had dissolved into the air itself. Cautiously, he stepped out from the veil of shadows. His body was ragged, clothes torn and skin marked with wounds that weighed him down. The pain burned through his nerves, sharp and unrelenting, but still something he forced himself to bear. And then, the moment he revealed himself, Ash appeared before him. His blade crackled with lightning, the arcs dancing wildly around the steel. Swish! The strike came without warning. Roan reacted instantly, parrying with his dagger while twisting his other hand forward, aiming straight for Ash's heart. Yet the blade cut through nothing. Ash had already vanished, his presence flickering out like smoke. Clang! The sound erupted behind him. Roan spun just in time, his daggers meeting Ash's sword as sparks scattered through the air. The force of the impact rattled through their bones, each clash leaving a dull ache in their arms. Roan had strength. With 3 of his stats already at 600, his attacks carried crushing weight. Yet his vitality remained under 400, leaving his defense weaker than it should have been. Against Ash, that gap showed itself clearly. Each strike from Roan was powerful enough to send Ash flying, but Ash never gave him the chance. At the very instant the recoil should have taken hold, Ash used Transcendent Step, shifting his body and canceling the momentum, reappearing at another angle to attack again. Again and again, the pattern repeated, faster than most eyes could follow. This world often spat on the laws of physics, twisting reality into shapes of fantasy. And what unfolded now was one of those impossible sights. This is too humiliating. Roan gritted his teeth as his daggers blurred, intercepting strike after strike. The rhythm was relentless, the pressure unyielding. He could not continue like this. His wounds were piling up, and each clash only deepened the pain tearing through his body. If only I could have gained enlightenment. The thought surfaced bitterly. Standing at the peak of Grandmaster rank, his only desire was to reach enlightenment. That single step would allow him to form his domain and cross into the legendary rank. But enlightenment was not something that bent to will. It did not come simply because one sought it. It arrived like a storm on its own accord, and never when called. Let's break this stalemate first. His eyes sharpened with resolve. Roan hurled one of his daggers onto the ground, while the other remained in his grip to guard against Ash's unending strikes. The primordial aura pressing down on him already slowed his movements, and with one weapon less, the burden only grew heavier. Ash's blade slipped through, cutting into him again, but Roan accepted the wounds. They were sacrifices he chose to make. The dagger hit the ground, sinking into the shadows as if devoured. At once, the darkness all around surged to life, rippling and stretching like living flame. From every direction, blades of pure shadow rose and lunged at Ash. Each dagger was identical in size, shape, and weight, and each one carried killing intent no weaker than the real thing. This was the second form of Roan's dagger arts. His trait bound him to the shadows, letting him merge with them and shape them as he pleased. But his control had limits. To truly manifest them, he always needed a medium. Right now, that medium was the dagger. Without it, his manipulation was too weak, barely enough to lift an opponent into the air. But with it, the shadows answered him fully, their edge sharpened into weapons that sought his enemy's life. Would you look at that? Ash thought, as a smile crept onto his usually emotionless face. The expression looked almost out of place, but it carried a strange sharpness, like a blade flashing in the dark. Daggers were closing in from all sides, their glinting edges cutting through the air. He could have easily avoided every single one if he wanted to. All it would take was a moment of teleportation out of the isolated space, and then he could return without a scratch. But I want to try facing them head-on. He knew he was being reckless, yet he still welcomed it. He had already faced this kind of trial once before in the Dragon Continent, but this time he wanted to see just how far he had come since then. His will had grown strong enough that he did not have to fear the strain of using Omni-Thought for extended periods of time. Even now, it was flowing through him like a second heartbeat, calm and unshakable. Lightning reflex. Outwardly nothing seemed to change, but the truth was hidden beneath layers of runic concealment. The phenomenon of runic symbols moving, twisting, and forming spells remained invisible to outside eyes, veiled by the rune of concealment. It was an ability Ash had acquired after fusing the rune into his very soul tree. The rune of knowledge granted him elemental sight, letting him perceive what others could not. The rune of life sustained him, giving his body power to survive without food and water. As soon as the spell activated, the world around him seemed to slow. Every motion stretched into clarity, every shadow sharpened into detail. He began weaving between the storm of flying daggers, his body moving with precision that bordered on artistry. His movements looked hypnotic, like a graceful dance performed upon the edge of death. When Roan saw this, even he could not help but stare, his eyes wide with disbelief. The daggers were so fast that even Roan himself was barely able to keep track of them. Yet Ash moved as if he already knew where each blade would strike before it was even released. Time stretched on, and eventually Roan stopped the attack. The second form of his technique consumed too much mana, draining his reserves far quicker than he expected. He knew it was wasteful to keep pushing when his energy was already thinning. The shadow daggers dissolved, melting back into the darkness from which they were born. Ash finally stopped as well, his chest rising and falling heavily, each breath sharp as if the air itself resisted him. Thin wisps of smoke rose from his skin, which had turned faintly red from the strain. That was fun. The words echoed within him, and a strange satisfaction welled up in his chest. He dodged every single one of the daggers, and that act boosted his confidence. No matter what anyone said, he found entertainment in this struggle, and that's what all mattered to him. As his gaze shifted toward Roan, he expected to meet his opponent's eyes. Instead, he saw only empty space. A cold realization brushed against him, and before his thoughts could settle, an overwhelming presence appeared behind him. A sharp sound tore through the silence, and something pierced through his heart from behind. Ash's expression froze, and the triumphant sound of laughter filled his ears. I did it! I actually did it. Now all those precious artifacts and all that power will finally be mine. The ancient legacy will belong to me. The dagger protruded from his chest, lodged exactly where his heart should have been. Blood stained the steel as Roan kicked Ash's back, forcing the blade in deeper. Ash staggered, his body trembling as he struggled to turn around, but in doing so he only drove the dagger further into himself. His eyes lifted, locking onto Roan. His opponent was covered in blood and wounds, yet still smiling with a menacing satisfaction. Each step Roan took toward him was slow, deliberate, almost savoring the sight of Ash's fall. Ash's expression was one of disbelief, as if he had just witnessed something beyond comprehension. Standing before him, looking down with mocking reverence, Roan spoke. You were quite a tough opponent. I will remember your name, Ashburn, for you are the only one who managed to push me this far and leave me in this state. For that, I would even commend you. Ash said nothing. He only stared back at him, his silence heavier than any reply could have been. You were quite a tough opponent. I will remember your name, Ashburn, for you are the only one who managed to push me this far and leave me in this state. For that, I would even commend you. Ash said nothing. He only stared back at him, his silence heavier than any reply could have been. Chuckling, Roan kicked Eclipse from Ash's hands. The gem slid across the ground, coming to rest a short distance away. Lowering himself, Roan crouched before Ash and looked into his eyes. You are about to die, but that is not my fault. I was only doing my job. Still, it is a pity. You are going to die with so many precious things in your grasp. Why not give them to me? Ash looked at him, his voice faint as he muttered. Who was behind it? Roan shook his head slowly, answering with a calm tone. I do not know. We keep the identity of our customers confidential. That is our rule. So hurry and tell me where the artifact is, the one that can store living beings. You put that girl inside it too, didn't you? She was beautiful. I could enjoy myself before reporting that she died in Crossfire. Oh, right. Why am I even asking? I could just take them from your... Before he could continue, Roan's body froze. Ash was no longer releasing his primordial aura. Ever since the dagger pierced his heart, that suffocating weight had completely disappeared. Yet what Roan felt now was far worse. A chill pressed against his soul, sharp and merciless, as if unseen eyes were watching him and slowly stripping him bare. What is this? His breath caught in fear. Ash's face was pale and drained of color, but his eyes carried a coldness that pierced straight into him. 1 moment ago, he had looked like a man at death's door, but now he radiated the presence of a predator, like a wolf staring hungrily at its prey. Even so, when Roan's gaze fell to the dagger lodged deep in Ash's chest, right where the heart should be, a fleeting relief steadied him. No one could live through that. Then Ash spoke. You crossed the line. The words were quiet, but they carried a weight that made Roan falter. He frowned, trying to understand, but before he could respond, Ash's hand shot forward and seized his wrist. Roan tried to pull back, but the grip was like iron, cold and unyielding, refusing to let go. A sharp sound tore through the air. That was the last thing Roan heard. Something moved faster than his eyes could follow. His vision spun violently, and in that instant, he caught sight of Eclipse, the Jian he had kicked away, cleaving cleanly through his neck. His head separated from his body, and for a brief moment he watched it fall. At least I completed my task. That was his final thought, as his head struck the ground with a heavy thud and rolled lifelessly across the stone floor. Ash gazed at the starlit sky with an empty look in his eyes, his hand slowly pulling the dagger out from his chest. The way he did it and made it almost look normal was not pleasant to imagine, at least. The wound sealed almost instantly, his heart mending as if it had never been pierced at all. He died too easily, Ash muttered under his breath, a faint edge of dissatisfaction lingering in his tone. Everything had unfolded exactly as he had planned. He had played the part of the vulnerable one, the man who relied on bluffs of primordial aura and clever tricks, with some strength that came from an external source. He had even acted out the perfect expression of shock, letting his heart be pierced, just to make Roan believe he had one. The deception had been flawless because Ash had used the soul library, flooding his mind with memories of real fear and real shock, which allowed his acting to become indistinguishable from the truth. And in the end, that was what had happened. But Roan had talked too much. He had run his mouth carelessly, and Ash disliked that. It made him lose his composure, and when Ash lost his composure, mercy was the first thing to vanish. I should have burned him alive, or even better, skinned him for muttering that filth, Ash said coldly, his gaze fixed on Roan's lifeless body. But, alas! His mind moved before he could even think properly. And before he could stop, Roan was already beheaded. Shaking his head, Ash knelt and began searching through what remained of the assassin. Hidden knives, vials of toxins, and small sacks filled with the infamous formless poison came into his possession, along with a few other odd tools. Ash stored them all within his soul vault. He then instructed Snow through their soul bond to consume the formless poison, knowing that Snow's ability to adapt to any toxin would allow her to analyze, absorb, and transform the deadly substance into something even more dangerous. Along with the weapons, Ash also uncovered a collection of mana stones, some money, and finally a badge. He studied it closely. On the back were 5 golden stars, while the front displayed a symbol of a half-open violet door, etched into the surface of black metal. Now, which organization is this? Ash frowned slightly. He had never seen or heard of such a group, not within the novel and not even in his own knowledge of this world. Is it an organization that was never meant to matter, or did it appear because of the butterfly effect? The answer was unclear, and for the moment Ash did not care. Whether it had always existed or had been born from changes he caused, the result would be the same. Whoever they were, they would soon feel the full weight of his wrath. He did not want to leave the roots as they were. Only one assassin had come today, and next time, who knows, someone even powerful will come. Someone that even Ash can't handle. That's why Ash will have to bring the roots out of the ground. Before moving on, Ash raised his eyes toward the floating islands near the magic tower. The glow of runes below the island glowed faintly in the distance. His gaze hardened as a single thought pressed itself into his mind. I need to deal with Ethan. I cannot allow Alicia to be dragged into more danger because of his reckless actions. The assassination attempt was also different from what it was in the novel. Neutral continent. A continent filled with countless dungeons, sprawling monster hideouts, secret bases of criminal organizations, and many other groups that operated in the shadows. It was a land where lawlessness thrived, and power dictated everything. This continent had only one rule, and that was that there were no rules. The strong did whatever they pleased, while the weak endured endless suffering. No mundane human could possibly survive in such a place, for the land itself demanded strength. The forests were filled with beasts that could tear apart an army. The mountains were crawling with monsters, and even the rivers carried venomous creatures lurking beneath the surface. Only those who were powerful and cunning enough to overcome such dangers could claim a place here, and these were the ones who truly lived upon the neutral continent. They were individuals who had long stepped beyond the ordinary crowd. In one of the concealed strongholds of a notorious criminal organization known as the Ebon Court, silence filled a dimly lit chamber. Then, without warning, a soul lamp shattered with a sharp crack. Its faint glow flickered once before vanishing completely, leaving only shards scattered across the stone floor. The man who had been sitting in meditation snapped open his eyes. His breathing stilled as he stared at the broken lamp. Slowly, his expression darkened, and his gaze turned ice-cold. Roan died? Impossible. How could that happen? His mind struggled to accept it. Roan had always been the most cautious, the most capable assassin among them. His reputation was not built on brute strength alone, but on precision, patience, and an unmatched instinct for survival. He was the kind of man who avoided unnecessary fights, who struck only when there was no chance of failure. For someone like him to fall meant only two things. Either the enemy was far too strong, or the enemy concealed his true strength until the very end. The man exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. He found himself leaning toward the second possibility. If the enemy had been overwhelmingly powerful, then Roan would never have been assigned to that mission in the first place. Which could only mean that the enemy had hidden his power until the last moment, deceiving even Roan's sharp instincts. This is dangerous. I need to inform the higher-ups immediately. Roan was close to the vice leader, and if word of this spreads, I fear something terrible is about to unfold. He rose at once, his robes rustling as he moved with urgent steps through the dim corridors of the hideout. The shattered pieces of the lamp still lay behind him, their silent glow extinguished forever. Alicia POV. It is the same feeling I felt when I awakened the powers of my blessing. The thought surfaced suddenly as her hazy awareness returned, pulling her out of the trance-like state. No, it is not the same. It is somewhat different. She could not put a name to it, but she felt undeniably stronger, her mana brimming like a rising tide. It was not that she had advanced to the next rank, nor that her stats had increased. And yet, without either of those, her very being felt sharpened, refined, as if some hidden strength had quietly awakened within her. Her eyes opened slowly, catching the pale moonlight that spilled across her form. Tonight, it seemed brighter than ever, wrapping her in a soft glow that seeped deep into her soul. When she lifted her gaze to the moon itself, she felt a strange comfort wash over her. It was gentle, warm, and safe, like an embrace she had never known. Though she had never once felt a mother's love in either of her lives. This was the closest she could imagine. I think I know what this is. She clenched her hands tightly, feeling raw power coursing through her veins. Her moon mana swirled within her, thicker and purer than ordinary mana, its potency undeniable. I gained an overall boost in my strength, and I feel free. The power she had awakened was not a permanent transformation but a conditional blessing, one that allowed her to tap into the hidden essence of the moon. As long as the moon shone above in the night sky, she would gain a surge of strength. Her stats would rise, her moon essence would strike harder, and the soul-attacking properties of her power would sharpen to an even deadlier edge. It did not stop there. Smaller boosts layered upon her as well. Flexibility, reflexes, heightened senses, all coming together to form a power that was greater than the sum of its parts. And speaking of senses, she could feel someone nearby. Instructor? Her perception had expanded without her realizing it, spreading outward in a soft sphere of awareness. Though limited in range, perhaps 10 meters at most, it was enough for her to discern the figure standing behind her without even turning around. "You are quite strange," came a calm, steady voice. "Awakening the powers of your blessing so suddenly? Did something happen? From what I know, the moon's blessing is not awakened through ordinary means. Only by experiencing something deeply personal, something different for each person, can its power emerge." The familiar tone made her heart skip. Vice Principal Elva. Instructor Elva, Ash. Alicia turned quickly, her words spilling out in a rush. She told her everything. About the attack, about Ash's instructions, about what she had witnessed before slipping into her trance. Ash had told her to wait, to trust him, but she could not. How could she simply stand aside when he was out there, fighting alone? Now that she had awakened this sudden strength, she could no longer ignore it. Even if she faced someone at the level of mythical rank, she would not waste the opportunity. As Elva listened, her expression grew colder, her thoughts swirling without pause. She knew how capable Ash was. After all, he had cleared a dangerous military zone deep in the untamed forest as nothing more than an assessment test for his semester exams. But if Ash had acted this way, choosing to drop Alicia somewhere safe before fighting, then her instincts told her the enemies were either too many in number or powerful enough to force his caution. What she did not know was that Ash was simply a complete paranoid. When he left Alicia behind, even he had no idea how many enemies there were. It had been nothing more than one of his safety measures, not something based on certainty. There was also the troubling matter of how Ash had been able to leave so peacefully while enemies were present. That was not something she could easily ignore. If she wanted the truth, she would need to go and see the place for herself. She placed her hand firmly on Alicia's shoulder, her grip steady, and her tone quiet but filled with urgency. "Just tell me the location and—" But before she could finish, and before Alicia could even form the words to point out where Ash had gone, the air shifted, and a presence appeared close to them, silent as a shadow. "A few moments ago. Is there a tracker on it?" Ash muttered as he stood on the top of the same building where he had just fought with Roan, though this time it was the actual place and not the isolated space. In his hands was the cuboidal artifact, the same one that had created that isolated dimension. He was wondering if there was some sort of tracker hidden within it, since it was entirely possible that the organization which was behind the assassination had prepared such countermeasures in advance. If their artifacts were lost or the assassin died, a tracker would allow them to retrieve it sooner or later. He turned it around and inspected it, thinking and analyzing carefully, but after some time he could not understand a single thing. With no clue to be found, he finally tossed the artifact into his soul vault. "Whatever, I will think about it later." Without wasting any more time, he instantly teleported away. The moment he appeared at the spot where he had left Alicia, he immediately noticed that she was still there. She did not heed his words to enter the hall, but she was also not alone. Someone else was standing with her. Instructor Elva? He did not get the chance to think much about it, because the next instant, a sudden force struck him. Alicia had rushed into him and hugged him tightly, without uttering a word. The condition of his clothes told her everything she needed to know. His attire was stained with blood, torn in several places, and there was even a hole near his chest where his skin was clearly visible. Yet apart from the blood, there was not a single wound left behind. That was natural, considering the kind of powers Ash possessed. Alicia did not bother asking him whether he was all right. She already knew the answer he would give, and it would not be the truth. So instead, she simply held him, clinging to him with all her strength, her silence carrying more weight than any words could. Sometimes it is not questions or reassurances that help, but a simple gesture can do more than one can imagine. A hug alone could convey emotions and comfort that hours of talk may fail to bring. But while Alicia held on to him, Ash's thoughts were moving elsewhere. What the hell? How was the impact this powerful? It was not that she had pushed him back. The strength was nowhere near enough to do that, but the impact still shocked him, making his lungs tighten for a brief moment. Did she awaken her powers even more? That was the only possibility that made sense to him. He could always confirm it later, but right now his attention shifted to Instructor Elva, who was standing silently nearby. He gently calmed Alicia, loosening her grip so she could breathe more easily, and then turned toward Elva. She was watching him with an expression that was completely impassive. The cheerful personality she sometimes displayed was nowhere to be seen. In fact, she rarely acted that way in front of Ash. Most of the time, their interactions carried this same tone. her being neutral and unreadable, showing no more emotion than necessary. Only on rare occasions did she reveal genuine concern. "How many?" Elva asked the question as casually as if she were asking how much food he had eaten. Ash's lips twitched slightly, but he replied in a short tone. "One." Her brows arched faintly, and she continued, her voice steady. "Which rank?" "Grandmaster. And I also found something among his belongings. Do you recognize the symbol, or know which organization it belongs to?" Ash said, giving his answer about the enemy's rank while shifting the topic to something else at the same time. Elva glanced at Ash for a brief moment, then turned her attention to the badge he was holding out to her. It was unusual, carrying a design that did not resemble any common insignia. The front bore the mark of a half-closed violet door, carved into the black metal with precision, while the back carried 5 golden stars lined neatly together. After studying it closely, she shook her head. "Even I do not know. I do not keep records of every organization in the world. There are specific people assigned for that task. But let me borrow this for a while. I will find out which group it belongs to and tell you when I learn the answer." Ash nodded. "Yeah, all right. That is fine by me. I was already planning to let you handle it. Now, if you will excuse us, Miss Elva, I will be returning home. With clothes like these, I have no desire to enter the party, and to be honest, I had no mood to attend it from the beginning anyway." He shifted his vision toward the Great Hall's entrance, his tone quieter as he muttered a last request. "Please also tell the host of the event, St. Lucan, about the assassination attempt on me, the reason I was late today, and why I did not attend the celebration party." Before Elva could say anything, Ash quickly took Alicia with him and disappeared, teleporting away before she could give a single reply. He did not want any more conversation with her. His behavior might have seemed a little rude, but it could easily be dismissed as nothing more than the attitude of a child. Elva's gaze lingered for a moment on the spot where Ash had been standing just a heartbeat ago. Silence stretched between her and the empty air, before she let out a quiet sigh. Tilting her head upward, she looked at the moon, its pale light casting a gentle glow over the courtyard. Then, without another word, she turned around and walked away, her figure soon disappearing into the night. Meanwhile, somewhere else, there were many people and races that were eyeing the Phoenix Festival, or more precisely, they were watching the flames that carried the power of rebirth, healing both mundane and awakened people alike. "They are quite extravagant, aren't they?" A voice spoke into the air. It was the same voice that had been keeping watch on Milicia, the same presence Naira had faintly sensed earlier. "Yeah, not even a month has passed since they had their bloodline awakened, and already they are using the flames of Nirvana like a showpiece," another voice replied, slightly irritated. The voices belonged to Bjorn and Tyrus, the young black and green dragons. They were among the 5 who had once pursued Ash and fought him. Now, in their human forms, they hovered in the sky with small horns and hair that reflected their dragon colors. Tyrus was holding a large amount of candy and snacks, sampling everything with delighted curiosity as she watched the scene below. Using a high-ranked concealment artifact, they quietly observed the festival, from its grand beginning to the flames burning brightly at its center. Though I would say, these humans are quite peculiar in making these sweets. They are really nice. I stole their recipe. I will try to make them when I return," Tyrus said happily, her voice carrying a dreamy note as she imagined eating countless sweets of her own making. Bjorn only looked at her with a darkened expression, his face pale with the memory of her cooking. Being her friend, he and the other 3 had suffered through her so-called meals many times. To her, poison was nothing more than another spice that brought out flavor. She truly believed adding poison together with its antidote made food both safe and delicious. What she never understood was that her unique taste buds were not the same as everyone else's. For the rest of them, her food was nothing short of torment, a harrowing memory none of them wanted to relive. "Oh, dragon god, save us from her cooking." "What? Why are you looking at me like that?" Tyrus asked, narrowing her eyes when she noticed his stare. "And nothing. What do you think we should report to the elders?" I don't think we saw anything particularly useful, except that the rumors about another mythical bloodline surfacing are true. But it will still take a long time before they completely shed their mortal shells and truly become a mythical beast clan. Bjorn quickly shifted the subject, not willing to get trapped under her questioning gaze. We will just report that. After all, we are only here to observe. There are already too many things happening on our own side, and I doubt the elders would be free enough to concern themselves with this right now. Tyrus replied casually, munching another sweet. Bjorn's expression grew more serious at her words. The conflict that had divided the dragons was still locked in stalemate, but the adult dragons were beginning to stir from their slumber, with half of them already awake. The signs of coming chaos were clear. Whom do you support? Tyrus asked suddenly, her voice quieter as she looked toward the flames that danced fiercely at the center of the city. Bjorn shook his head slowly and answered, I support no one but the dragon race as a whole. If we dragons also lose our unity and turn against one another, then we will be no better than humans. These lesser beings fight among themselves endlessly, blinded by reasons such as gender, religion, and countless meaningless divisions. They do not see how ugly it is. I do not want to see dragon blood reduced to that level. For that, I will try to mend the rift between the elders. But before that, we must first uncover the true cause behind their divide. A silence settled between them. Tyrus stopped eating, her eyes lingering on him for a moment before shifting away, though her thoughts were still caught by his words. I see. A faint blush rose on her cheeks. What an idiot. But dragons were not the only ones watching the festival with their analytic gaze, for there were many criminal organizations lurking in the shadows, hidden enemies with their own motives, and even the demons. It is true, my lady. The bloodline of those crimson bastards has awakened once again. The visionary's voice carried clear hostility, and the air around him seemed heavier because of it. It was rare for him to lose his calm, yet now the bitterness in his tone revealed the depth of his anger. The eternal flames were not just fire. They were the nemesis of all demons, a force that burned through demonic energy and left nothing but purity in its wake. To demons, the flames were agony and erasure, and to see them being displayed so openly during a festival was like mockery. The visionary was also quietly furious at himself, for he had not been able to see something this important happening in the future. Instead, this information had come through Marba, the demon general tasked with gathering intelligence. Fate is constantly shifting, and even now the tangled threads have not been restored. If it continues like this, then they may never be restored. Something must be done before the pattern becomes completely unreachable. His gaze drifted toward the throne where Lady Lilith sat in place of Orion. Her presence alone made the chamber feel heavier, as if every heartbeat belonged to her. She was calm and composed, her expression both serious and thoughtful, yet there was a sharpness in her eyes that suggested her mind was weaving through countless plans at once. Among all the overlord demons, her power was second to none. With a single thought, she could stir deep emotions in the hearts of others, ensnaring them in lust and then bending their will until they no longer remembered it as their own. Entire armies could fall under her control. And yet, despite her power, she remained loyal to the Demon King and the Demon Prince, a loyalty sealed by bloodline itself. To break it would mean losing everything she possessed. Her soft hum lingered in the air. She weighed the possibilities, and the silence itself felt heavy. After a time, she turned her gaze back to the visionary. His role had shifted more toward that of an advisor in recent days, for his power was tied to fate itself, and fate was now in complete disarray. Is there still no contact with the prince? Her tone was level, but there was a weight behind the words. The visionary shook his head, his face grim. Ever since the discovery of the heart of the abyssal god, the demon prince had not returned. Before leaving, he had given strict orders not to follow. The only solace was knowing that he was still alive, something every demon could sense through the bond of blood. The lifeblood of the royal family carried a presence that all demons could feel, and when one of them perished, that pulse of command was extinguished instantly. Since the number of royals was few, It was not difficult to tell. Then leave the humans and those red birds alone for now. Focus instead on the creation of that thing. Once the prince returns with the heart, our plan can finally begin in earnest as long as we can make that thing. And when it succeeds, the flames of those red birds would not be our concern. The visionary lowered his head at the command, though his eyes gleamed with anticipation. The dwarves are working tirelessly, my lady. Every great blacksmith has been bound to the task. However, there is a problem. Lilith tilted her head slightly, a subtle gesture telling him to continue. We discovered who was behind the destruction of the dwarven city. It was the same boy, Ashburn, and the human Ray Dawson. I suggest we eliminate them both immediately. I cannot understand why the prince refuses to allow their deaths. According to... The words cut short as a crushing pressure fell upon him, pinning him to the floor. His knees struck the ground, and his breath grew ragged. His body drenched in sweat within moments. Lilith's cold eyes settled on him, her voice soft but merciless. Do not question the will of the prince. If he has chosen not to act, then there is a reason. Still, I will not deny they are troublesome. Therefore, I will give the order in his stead. Both Ashburn and Ray Dawson are to be captured alive, but only after they are completely neutralized. The pressure lifted, and the visionary exhaled heavily, trembling slightly before a deep smile crept onto his face. Yes, yes, certainly, my lady. We will capture them both before the prince returns. The visionary straightened himself slightly, his voice carrying a trace of eagerness now that the weight of her pressure was gone. We have also managed to uncover details about the anomaly named Ashburn. It was comparatively harder to obtain, and the information was scattered. But after much effort and countless hours, we finally compiled everything into a complete record. As he spoke, he carefully extended a dark leather-bound file toward her. The air seemed to grow heavier as it reached her hands. Lilith opened it with deliberate slowness, her eyes gliding over the contents. With each page, her expression shifted, and then a dangerous smile curved her lips. The look in her eyes sharpened, and for an instant, the aura surrounding her throne seemed to ripple. Interesting. What a crazy little kid. A soft laugh escaped her at first, but it quickly grew. Ha ha ha. Ga ha 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 ha. Ha ha ha. Her laughter echoed across the chamber, rich with amusement but also carrying a sinister promise. Boom! The earth shook and the surroundings trembled as a thunderous clash erupted between two entities. The land bore marks of destruction everywhere. The ground looked scorched and melted as if an intense heat had devoured everything, while in other places, clean, precise cuts sliced through the terrain. Deep craters spread across the battlefield like scars carved into the earth. There was nothing but darkness stretching endlessly around them, yet the heavy blackness was forced to retreat each time their powers collided. Sparks of black, red, and a strange rainbowish hue scattered in every direction, filling the place with blinding flashes. It was as if their battle was unfolding not in one place but at countless points at the same time. And yet, the chaos never reached beyond its bounds. The devastation stopped abruptly after a certain distance, as though this battlefield had been severed from the natural rules of the world. If not for this damn heart, Salareth thought as he barely managed to dodge another violent strike. His chest rose and fell heavily, though his body still moved like an oiled machine. Boom! 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 The repeated impacts shook the air like rolling thunder. Salareth thrust both hands forward, unleashing a jet of violet flames that roared outward and swallowed his enemy whole. For a moment, it seemed enough, but then a hand emerged from within the blaze, tearing it apart as if ripping through fragile cloth. A strange magic circle, unlike any created by humans, formed in midair. Its complex patterns glowed with eerie light before releasing a torrent of jet-black flames that surged forward and engulfed Salareth. But Salareth refused to be buried in the dark. His hands cleaved through the black fire, slicing the flames themselves as though cutting apart their very essence. The next instant, both figures blurred, vanishing and reappearing in a storm of ceaseless attacks, each strike colliding with unrelenting force. It is taking a toll on me now. The thought surfaced faintly in Salaretha's mind, yet his will pushed his body to keep moving without pause. His arms ached, and his breath grew heavier, but not once did his movements falter. Even as exhaustion threatened to consume him, he pressed forward, the memory of the day when all of this had begun flashing in the back of his mind. Everything was fine until Ash gave him that demonic heart. He chose to study it somewhere safe, someplace where no one else was present. In the neutral continent, there was one such valley, traversing the whole land in a diagonal crater, that cut the neutral continent in two, like a scar stretching endlessly across its surface. The valley was called the Bottomless Valley, a place so deep that no one who fell ever returned. But it was not truly bottomless. No one has just found the bottom yet. It was a strange and dangerous place. The valley ran so far down into the earth that no sunlight could ever reach its depths. Darkness covered everything, and after a certain point, even the air disappeared, leaving no oxygen for life to cling to. That was one of the reasons no one survived. The valley was so deep that if someone tried to climb through it, the descent itself would take years. And if someone fell, nothing would remain of them, not even their bones, which would be crushed flat from the force of impact. Yet if one crossed the place where air no longer existed, they would eventually find the valley filled with chaotic mana. Chaotic mana was unlike any other. It could not be absorbed, for it was far too unstable, and would shatter the mana core of anyone foolish enough to try. Only those with absolute willpower, strong enough to bend the world around them, could survive in such a place. And those entities were none other than the Saints. Even a mythic rank individual could try to endure it for a while, but after a certain depth, even they would begin to struggle. The deeper one went, the denser the chaotic mana became. Mana that was once invisible to the naked eye would turn into raging storms, colliding again and again until the very air seemed to scream with their violence. If one went deep enough, even saints would falter. Some might wonder if such a place, overflowing with mana, could serve as the perfect land for cultivation. After all, with so much power in the air, strength could be gained faster than anywhere else. That was partly true. Saints often trained here, their bodies sustaining themselves on mana in place of air. But for anyone else, the valley was nothing more than a death sentence. Most would perish quickly from the lack of oxygen. Breathing artifacts, normally reliable, failed the deeper one went, as the chaotic mana interfered with the energy inside them. Only the highest-ranked artifacts, like the Sealing Dagger, once used to contain the heart of the Abyssal God, could function here. Yet even those would eventually falter near the storm of chaotic mana. It was for this reason that Salareth chose this place. He carved out a massive hollow in one of the valley walls, forming a cavern where he could work undisturbed. The large cave rested just on the edge of the chaotic mana storm. First, everything was fine. He studied the heart, carefully prying into its secrets, all while supplying the Sealing Dagger with his pure ether energy to keep its seal intact. With so much mana surrounding him, he did not have to worry about his reserves being drained. The demonic heart resisted fiercely, but Salareth continued to press his will against it, forcing it down little by little. Time passed like this, though he no longer knew how long. In this place, the flow of time had become meaningless to him. But then, one day, without warning, someone intruded upon the place he had built. Salareth looked up, still in his human form, and saw someone walking towards him. The person who approached looked normal from every angle. He had a plain build, dressed in black and brown clothes, and walked as if he were merely strolling. His hair reached his shoulders, and his skin was pale, while an amused smile lingered on his face, as though he had come across something he did not expect. His eyes, too, were black, but Salareth knew it was nothing but deception. His own eyes glowed with a rainbow hue, shining brighter in the darkness, piercing through both shadow and illusion alike. Through them, he saw the truth, a storm of demonic energy approaching with calm, measured steps. Yet this storm did not rage chaotically as demonic energy usually did. It moved with eerie discipline, steady and orderly, as though worshipping him and following like a perfectly obedient servant. The boy's appearance shifted from what Salareth first saw. His skin turned into a shade of light black, and two horns pushed out from his forehead. His hair lengthened, flowing freely, though his height and well-muscled frame remained unchanged. The only thing that grew more striking were his eyes. They gleamed like dark jewels, with black and red liquid merging together to form eyes without pupils, alien and unsettling. A demon king? No, he is too young to be a demon king. But his power is the same as mine. Who is he? Salareth remained calm. It was not difficult to guess why a demon had come to him. His vision flicked from the figure to the chained black heart in his hand. Who are you, demon? Salareth asked, his voice carrying a trace of coldness. The fight between them was inevitable. He still bore a deep grudge against demons. His daughter had died because of them, and he would never pass up a chance to kill one of a higher rank. Perhaps he might even uncover something about the one who had taken her life. The demon chuckled as he stopped a few meters away. The bottomless valley was wrapped in darkness, but their vision pierced it easily, letting them see each other clearly. At some point, Salareth had already stood up and stored the demonic heart in his storage space. Though it was alive, it could not resist him. Bending the smaller rules of reality without harming nature was something he could do with ease. I expected no less from you. Truth be told, even I was a little surprised to see the king of unicorns with that heart. Were you the one who helped the elves? The demon asked, though he gave Salareth no time to reply before continuing. Well, it does not matter. In the end, it changes nothing. I could just kill you here as well, removing an obstacle from my path. A heavy silence settled in the bottomless valley. You still have not answered me, demon. Who are you, and what rank do you hold among your kind? Salareth ignored the rambling and pressed with the only question that mattered to him. The demon smirked. I suppose you do have that sort of behavior. If it had been anyone else speaking to me like this, I would have melted his body until nothing but a puddle remained. But your body is far too precious to waste. His pupil-less eyes shifted, the liquid inside them swirling and morphing, red and black twisting together in restless patterns. His disguise fell completely away, leaving only the true form Salareth had already perceived. His presence grew heavier, pressing down on the surroundings as if the very valley bowed beneath it. I am Orion, he declared, the firstborn of the Demon King, and the future ruler of the endless darkness. I am Orion, the firstborn of the Demon King, and the future ruler of the endless darkness. Hearing that, Salareth did not react in any way. He was calm, his expression steady as he looked at the true form of the demon. His voice was low but unwavering as he asked again, Do you know the people who killed my daughter? Although Salareth asked, he already knew the chances of getting a clear answer were slim. At most, he might hear something if the demon was arrogant enough to let words slip, believing he could kill him with ease. His heart was cold, yet deep within, the ember of hope still flickered that perhaps there would be something he could get. After all, the person in front of him was probably second to none in the demon realm. But what happened next brought shock to Salareth's face for the first time. Are you talking about her? Orion asked, summoning the dead body of a small unicorn. Her once white fur was now stained black in several places, her delicate head marked by 3 small horns. Her eyes were closed, and her lifeless form was sealed within a glass-like container that pulsed faintly with dark energy. How? Salareth's body trembled as he saw the dead body of his daughter. His voice cracked with disbelief. How is this possible? I made sure to return the body to nature. Then how does he have it? His blood boiled as rage filled his chest at the sight of her preserved form, a sight that tore at both his reason and his pride. Whenever a unicorn died, its body returned to nature if the death was natural, dissolving into the very essence of the world. But if the life was taken by someone else, the body remained, and only through a long and sacred ritual could other unicorns return it to nature. That was the law of their existence, unbroken since ancient times. Yet now, in front of his very eyes, he saw the same body he had personally returned to nature. The sight alone was enough to shake his belief in what was real, making his very understanding of life and death tremble. "How do you have that?" Salareth shouted, though he did not attack. His rage surged violently, but reason still held his hand. He wanted answers first, even if his soul screamed for blood. "Now that expression is better," Orion said with a strange satisfaction. "It bothered me when you showed no fear, but this look, yes, this one suits you. Just answer me." Salareth forced the words out, his aura flaring violently and pressing down on the entire space. The land beneath them groaned as his power rippled through the air. Their auras collided in the air, clashing and grinding against one another. Yet neither was able to overcome the other. The stalemate filled the valley like an invisible storm, the very space trembling as if unable to bear the weight of two beings standing at its center. Seeing that he could not suppress Salareth in the battle of wills, Orion's smile grew wider, his eyes glinting with delight. "Finally, someone who can fight me. Good. Very good. As for your question, I have her body because I took it before it could return to nature. You see, if your daughter had lived and grown, her very existence would have brought forth something unimaginable." His voice was calm, almost casual, though every word carried a weight that made the air heavy, as though the world itself strained to hold the truth. "You may think I say this only because she carried the traits of both king and queen, but no. That was not the reason she died. That was not why she was killed. The true reason was her mind. Those traits were merely tools, a medium she could have used to shape what truly lay inside her. I suppose even you never realized how special she really was. Of course, I will not explain how I knew all of this about her. Things even you, her father, never understood." Orion slowly stepped forward, his voice echoing through the darkness. With a flick of his hand, he stored the body away once again, the container vanishing into a ripple of shadow. "Think of it another way, Salareth. A father grieving, lost in rage over his child's death. Do you think such a father would have the clarity to see what was happening around him?" He tilted his head slightly, his grin darkening. "The answer is no. You were so consumed that, even though you are a master of illusions yourself, you failed to notice the trick of someone weaker than you. You did not see her body being taken, even though it happened right in front of you. You only realized it now. Isn't it both amusing and maddening that after reaching such strength, you still let emotions blind you to the truth?" He stopped a few steps away, his voice falling into silence as his gaze locked with Salareth's. The stillness between them was suffocating, heavy with words left unsaid. Salareth's eyes remained calm and cold, but beneath that stillness, countless emotions churned and twisted, buried deep within. The storm in his heart did not show on his face, but its shadow lingered in his silence. But Orion's eyes were deep and intimidating, brimming with cruelty, as if the darkness itself lived within them. "Don't say anything. I do not want to hear something like, 'You dare,' or 'You are dead.' That is boring." He tilted his head slightly, a twisted grin curving on his lips. "But do you know why I am telling you all this? Because you are going to die too." Boom! Their fight after that passed in a blur, a storm of steel, spells, and earth-shattering force. The clash stretched on for days, perhaps even weeks, though in the timeless void of their battle it was impossible to tell how long had truly passed. Yet, no matter how long they fought, one truth became painfully clear: Orion and Salareth were equals. Even their domains canceled one another out. Neither could exert control over the surroundings. If Orion tried to bend the world to his will, Salareth's will clashed and pushed back. If Salareth attempted to mold reality, Orion's presence denied it. And when both tried to merge completely with their domains, the resulting surge threatened to tear the battlefield apart and drag them both into the chaotic mana storm raging in the depths below. Neither was willing to take that risk. No saint ever had, and neither of them intended to become the first. So they limited their domains, spreading them only far enough to reinforce the battlefield, ensuring the ground would not crumble beneath their struggle. Clang! Clang! That very restraint made the fight even more perilous. Saints possessed vast reserves of mana, and here, where the air itself overflowed with it, Solareth could replenish himself endlessly. Yet for Orion that should not have been the case. Logically, the demon should have faltered by now. But instead, he fought like a beast with no end to his strength. His demonic energy raging ceaselessly, never once dimming. His body showed no sign of energy exhaustion, as though he had endless demonic energy. Solareth, despite his superiority in discipline and control, was beginning to feel the weight of their unending battle. Even gods among mortals had limits, and his were drawing near. Maintaining a domain consumed both mana and will. It required constant mental strength, which could not be replenished as easily as mana. His body absorbed the endless flow of energy in the air, but his mind grew sluggish, weighed down by strain. Even though he was at the peak of monarch rank, Solareth could not overpower Orion, who was not even at his own peak yet. A/N, Monarch Saint, and he reminds me of Ash. The thought surfaced unbidden. Solareth did not know why, but Orion's blend of sword and magic stirred a fleeting memory of Ash, though only for a brief heartbeat before it was consumed by the battle. Boom! A deafening crash resounded, and both combatants pulled back, their bodies cloaked in smoke and dust. They breathed heavily, their chests rising and falling. Solareth still felt the same raw demonic power around Orion, though the strain showed in the way the demon moved. Even Orion was feeling the strain of fighting for so long. Just stay put, you defiled thing. D.U. Shut up, Solareth cursed inwardly. The voice clawing at his mind was the demonic heart itself. Its seal was weakening under the unending clash. To keep it bound, he had to divert a portion of his mana into reinforcing the seal, even as his body screamed for rest. Every moment made him weaker. The atmosphere was thick with mana, yet his slowing mind could not absorb it fast enough. The endless flow slipped past him, like water spilling through trembling hands. If this continues, I will die. But I cannot die. Not like this. I cannot allow myself to fall here. I must return my child to nature. I will not let these demons defile her even after death. The thought sharpened his resolve. He had been preparing for days, biding his time while his plan took shape. Looks like you are not powerful enough to kill me, huh? Solareth mocked, his tone calm but dripping with bitter resolve. The rage that had surged when he first saw his daughter's body had become a steady fuel, sharpening his control rather than letting it shatter him. He had long since realized the power between them was matched, and that neither could simply crush the other. But that knowledge only made him more determined to end it his own way. Orion did not respond. He steadied his breath, his smile curling back into place. Then, in the very next instant, his body blurred, and the fight resumed. Boom! 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 All right, time to teleport him into the chaotic mana. The plan was dangerous, but it was his only chance. If he could force Orion into the chaotic mana storm, the demon would be compelled to burn nearly all of his energy just to endure. Teleporting someone of Orion's level was already close to impossible, even with their consent. Without it, the difficulty multiplied beyond reason, and the toll on Solareth's body and core would be immense. The act would consume almost everything he had left, stripping him of strength, but it was a price he was ready to pay. This was also the reason he was constantly supplying energy into the seal of demonic heart so that he could gather some time for his strength to return after expending his energy. He steadied his breathing, gathering his will, weaving the spell, and focusing his entire being into a single strike of space-bending power. The air around him vibrated, reality trembling at the edges as the formation began to take shape. But just as he prepared to release it, what the hell? Solareth prepared his attack, the sneak formation he had been carefully weaving into the air during their clashes. Step by step, strike by strike, he had built it meticulously without drawing attention, and now the pattern was complete. After a few more exchanges, when the last piece of his work fell into place, he was finally ready to activate it. Then something completely unexpected happened. His body froze. Every part of him stopped, as if the world itself had halted alongside him. Not a single stone trembled. Not a ripple of mana stirred in his surroundings. Everything hung in absolute stillness, suspended in a frozen moment. Only Orion remained unaffected, moving freely through the suspended world. What is this? His mind instantly raced back to Ash, recalling the boy's words about his strange encounter with time stop? But how? I made sure the seal had enough energy to sustain itself. And even our domains are deployed. How is this possible? A cold weight pressed down on his chest as the sound of footsteps echoed unnaturally through the silence, each step resonating with a deliberate menace. I do not like it when someone meddles in my fights. I do not care if you were once a god, but do not cross the line that separates us. A low, commanding voice spoke, carrying a threat that seemed to vibrate through the very air around him. Another voice followed, sharp yet unervingly calm. You were taking far too much time, so I had to intervene. I did not expect you to be this weak, incapable of killing someone like him. How do you expect to achieve your goal if you are this helpless? As the words faded, a black heart bound in chains appeared, hovering beside Orion. The chains shook violently, cracks snaking across them until they shattered in a sudden burst. Despite the violent energy, the heart itself did not grow in size, held deliberately in check, as if its true power were being consciously suppressed. Orion floated slowly toward Solareth, who remained suspended midair, powerless and trapped. The black heart drifted alongside him, a silent testament to the danger Orion contained yet chose to restrain. Coming face to face with Solareth, Orion spoke in a low, deliberate voice. If I had wanted to, I could have killed him easily. But finding someone worth sparring with has become rare these days, and I was enjoying myself using only a fraction of my abilities. You ruined that moment. The silence that followed pressed down with suffocating weight, each second stretching like a tangible force. Solareth's mind raced, frantically searching for a way out, but the usual strategies that had always carried him through now seemed impossibly distant. Oh well, this fight has consumed too much time that I doubt you wish to waste. You remember the deal we struck, do you not? The voice emanating from the heart carried from every direction at once. Impossible to locate, yet undeniably present, its tone cold and unyielding. I do, Orion replied, his gaze sharpening as he looked back at Solareth, every flicker of his eyes hinting at the quiet danger beneath his composed exterior. He turned his attention back to the heart, his voice barely above a whisper, though it carried iron weight. Release the time. Are you certain you want this? The heart asked, its voice like distant thunder, resonating in the stillness. Orion's gaze locked onto the heart, an aura of unrelenting pressure radiating from him, as if his stare alone could crush the blackened chains. Sensing the intent, and knowing its restrained state, the heart had no choice but to obey. Time resumed its flow. The moment it did, Solareth struggled to move, forcing his limbs into action. My energy! He attempted to teleport away, his body lurching midair, only to find that his mana refused to respond. It was as though his own power had been sealed within him, leaving him utterly helpless. Deprived of his energy, Solareth fell heavily to the ground, the impact resonating through the earth beneath him. Before he could recover, Orion appeared without warning, his presence looming over him like a storm ready to break. Did you do this? Solareth asked, his voice steady but laced with strain, the desperation behind it carefully hidden. He poured every ounce of his mental strength into stirring the mana within his body, yet nothing responded. It is useless, Orion replied, calm and measured, almost with a hint of disappointment. That is one of my eye abilities. Even though you possess special eyes yourself, I am surprised you never employed them. Nor did you revert to your original beast form. Was there a reason for your restraint? I am genuinely curious. Solareth, at that moment, felt certain that no matter what he tried, death awaited him. His mana refused to answer his call, and the chaotic mana in the surroundings made it impossible to draw power from the environment. Even if he tried to exert his will, the turbulence was too strong to bend. His mind, dulled and sluggish from exhaustion, only made it worse. Looks like I am going to die. His body loosened with that thought, a strange calmness settling over him. He even managed a faint smile as he replied, I thought you did not deserve to face me in my beast form. That is all. As for my eye abilities, most of them are not suited for combat. What about you? Why did you hide your powers? And how did the seal on that demonic heart break? What is your goal? Why are you doing this? That are a lot of questions you have there. But Orion's hands blurred, his claws elongated, sliding through flesh as they pierced into Salaretha's chest, curling tightly around his heart. You are going to die anyway, so let me tell you. The sharp nails dug deeper, and silver blood spilled from the wound, running down Salaretha's chest while a line of it escaped the corner of his mouth. As I said, I wanted to stretch myself a little. Even when I fought human saints, they were far too weak. I could have killed them easily, but doing so would have only alerted my father. You see, his goal is simply to conquer this planet. Nothing more, nothing less. I do not know why he is so obsessed with it, but if he had the power to step in directly, he would have already done so long ago. With his other hand, Orion wiped the blood from Salaretha's chin, tasting it on his tongue. His eyes lit up as an expression of pure ecstasy crossed his face. Anyway, my goal is different. I want the path of the abyss to open. For that, I need 3 things. The first is this heart you were sealing. The second was your daughter. Could have worked even if I had only killed you and your wife, but once we discovered that your daughter was special, we decided to use her instead. And the third? Well, the preparations for that are being made even as we speak. Salaretha's eyes constricted at his words, but he forced his expression to remain still. Inside, however, his heart grew heavier as he realized just how far the madness of the demon in front of him was willing to go. Oh, there is one more thing I need, perhaps the most important of all sacrifices. Fortunately, those are easy to come by. Orion's lips curved into a faint smile as he spoke, as though it was nothing more than a trivial detail. You know, if you succeed, this world will become nothing but a land of death, and everything will be swallowed by the abyss. Why do you want it to open? Salaretha's words trailed off, his voice breaking as he felt something pierce his heart even deeper. The mythical beasts were powerful enough that even if their most important organ was destroyed, they could still live on, enduring until the wound healed naturally or mending it with their own strength. This was possible only because of their will, the force they imposed upon themselves to replace what was lost and keep their bodies functioning. And to kill someone of higher rank, one needed more than just power. The attack had to be imbued with their own will, a force capable of crushing the opponents. Right now, the strike that Orion had delivered was filled with his will, leaving no room for survival. That was already enough that I answered your questions. Just shut up and die. As those words left Orion's mouth, the smile on Salaretha's face only widened, even as the light slipped from his eyes. His body relaxed, falling limp, and before Orion's eyes, his form began to change. Orion pulled his hand free, his claws stained with silver blood, and ran his tongue across it. He took a slow step back, watching as Salaretha's body shifted into the form of a unicorn. Well, he died before I could even tell him how I escaped the seal, the floating black heart said, its voice carrying a strange sense of satisfaction. Orion turned his head slightly and asked, Tell me, even I do not know how you escaped. It was nothing difficult. The chaotic mana in this place had weakened the artifact bit by bit long before you arrived. I was always exposed to it, so the seal grew fragile over time. When you came here, it was already weakened enough that I could corrupt it completely. Normally, it would have been troublesome, but that bastard was too busy fighting you to notice my power creeping all over the seal. That is how I broke it so easily. I see. Orion's reply was calm as he walked towards Salaretha's corpse, intending to store it. Yet just as he neared, The lifeless body shone with a radiant rainbow hue that burst outward before vanishing entirely, leaving not even a trace behind. The surroundings fell into silence. For a brief moment, nothing moved, but an overwhelming killing intent lingered in the air like an invisible weight pressing on everything nearby. Looks like he had already anticipated his death after seeing his daughter's body, and may have set up a power that would activate when the time came, the Black Heart murmured. Orion stood still, his eyes fixed on the empty spot where the body had been, then sighed. It does not matter. He would have gone to his wife. I just need to find and kill her too. Simple as that. He looked down at the silver blood staining his hands, the faintest glimmer of a smile tugging at his lips. With this, visionary will be able to find their location quite easily. Eons ago, there was an age when runes existed in their true form within the world. They were not hidden or sealed, but stood as they truly were, radiating concepts and intents so profound that anyone could attempt to comprehend them. As long as one possessed the mental fortitude to endure the strain of gazing upon those true forms, the runes revealed themselves with clarity. During that time, an ancient civilization known as the Celestial Circle emerged. It was founded by 20 individuals, each of whom had encountered the runes and absorbed them. At first, there was discord among them, for they were strangers with no bonds of trust or kinship. In fact, they had not even known that others like themselves existed, scattered across the endless expanse of the universe. Each believed they were alone until fate, or perhaps the runes themselves, drew them together. These 20 were called the Rune Bearers. They were hailed as the greatest geniuses of their races, figures of unparalleled talent and potential. By fully comprehending the concepts behind the runes, they were able to merge with them, absorbing the essence in a way no ordinary being could. With every new concept grasped, their power multiplied, raising them to heights far beyond the reach of others. Among the Rune Bearers, there was someone who was the most knowledgeable of them all. His name was never recorded, yet his power was undeniable. This figure approached the remaining 19, one by one, and through his words and vision, he persuaded them to unite. Thus was born the Celestial Circle, a civilization destined to become the strongest that had ever existed. The circle flourished with frightening speed. Their mastery over runes, combined with the diverse talents of different races, allowed them to create powers and technologies that could easily overshadow the power systems of the present world. What the world now considers advanced would have seemed crude before the wonders of the Celestial Circle. But a civilization that blended countless races, magics, runes, and powers. A civilization that bent the very laws of the world and reshaped them as it pleased. A civilization that produced brilliance unmatched and talents unrivaled. That civilization vanished in a single night. At least there is a compiled report about it here. Ash quietly closed the book in his hands. Its title read The Celestial Circle. At first, he had picked it up expecting detailed knowledge about some extraordinary magic circle, perhaps a formation that could enhance his abilities or guide him toward new heights of power. Instead, what he found was a chronicle of history, yet one that carried its own kind of revelation. At least now I finally know the name of the civilization that once absorbed the runes, and not only that, he realized he had learned far more than he expected. The book was thick and comprehensive, filled with information that matched fragments he had painstakingly gathered from dozens of books within the Academy. The depth of the dragon's knowledge revealed itself in these pages. Their ability to compile such an extensive record of an ancient civilization, one that had thrived millions of years ago, was proof of their unmatched scholarship. The report contained everything they had managed to uncover from ruins scattered across the world, pieced together into a coherent whole. The most knowledgeable of them all? The phrase might have seemed vague to an ordinary reader, yet to Ash it carried a weight that struck directly at his thoughts. If I am right, that figure must have been the one who absorbed the rune of knowledge. To possess such wisdom, to persuade every other rune-bearer to set aside pride and rivalry in order to forge a new era, such a person must have been terrifyingly strong. Even so, a question remained in Ash's mind. Who among the 20 rune-bearers was the strongest? The book gave no answer. There were no hints that suggested who truly held supremacy among them all. Perhaps no records about this were made, or possibly their strength was so varied that no conclusion could ever be reached. Logically, the bearer of the Rune of Knowledge had to be among the most powerful, given that he had the ability to lead and unite the others. Yet there were also those who held the runes of time, of space and life, which also had the potential to surpass, if not completely overpower, the Rune of Knowledge. The measure of strength between them was not something that could be decided so easily. But maybe I am missing something here. Maybe the Rune of Knowledge is the strongest of all. After all, the runes I possess are still not fully comprehended, whereas the other rune bearers have reached complete understanding of their own runes. Maybe the Rune of Knowledge will grant me some kind of overwhelming ability that I cannot yet imagine? Ash was uncertain. These were only his assumptions, nothing more. Sighing, he leaned back in his comfortable chair, closing his eyes as he allowed his thoughts to roam. Sitting in his soul library, he felt the calm of his soul envelop him, the quiet around him sharpening the focus of his mind. He continued to think, letting one possibility lead naturally to another. His hands tapped lightly against the desk as his mind shifted between questions and possibilities. Using Omni-Thought had become so natural that it was almost instinctual, a seamless part of his body and life. I do not know. There are so many possibilities, and I do not want to strain my mind for answers that may not exist. Yet one question would not leave him, no matter what he thought. When was the World Tree born? Was it before the Life Rune Bearer discovered the Rune of Life, or after? If it existed before, then the World Tree must hold knowledge of countless events, but that raised questions about its presence during the fall of the ancient civilization. The Celestial Circle had been wiped out in a single night. If the World Tree had existed in the same reality, it should have been destroyed along with them. If it survived, then it must have come from a different world, originally Acumia. But if the World Tree was born after the extinction of the Celestial Circle, then who took the Rune of Life from her, and how was it sealed? According to the World Tree, the rune was not in a sealed state when she comprehended it, which means someone must have taken it and sealed it. But if that is true, then all the other runes must have been unsealed at some point, only to be sealed and scattered across the planets and the universe. But it does not explain why there are 10 sealed runes on this planet. As his thoughts traced these possibilities, Ash's gaze grew colder. Why do I feel like I am being manipulated, dancing in the hands of someone else? It might simply be overthinking, as it often was for him. Yet more often than not, his instincts were accurate. Everything depended on the timing of the World Tree's birth. Letting his thoughts rest for a moment, Ash exhaled slowly and opened his eyes to the real world. Sunlight streamed through the windows and touched his face, warm and gentle. Ash stretched and relaxed. Turning his head, he saw light snow falling outside, drifting softly through the beams of sunlight. The combination of warmth and snow created a strange but peaceful atmosphere. Let's sleep a little bit now. Waking up, Ash took a warm bath, ate breakfast, and went outside to practice with his sword. Nowadays, Alicia is training with Instructor Elva and Saint Alice, learning to control the new abilities she had awakened due to the high influx of emotions she had experienced the other day. Ash already knew what abilities she awoke, though he did not tell her. He believed that such power should be discovered by the wielder themselves, not told by others. The instructors were present only to ensure she did not harm herself in the process of learning. A short distance from the house, Ash practiced with his sword, performed exercises and meditation, and experimented with forming new spells inspired by the ideas that came to him in flashes of insight. His list of spells had grown so vast that even he sometimes struggled to decide which one to use. In some situations, the outcome would be nearly identical no matter which spell he cast. The difference lay only in the execution and the subtle effects of the spell itself. Where most people struggled due to a lack of spells, Ash struggled because he had far too many. Even now, he had not perfected a breathing technique suited to him, still searching for that final piece to complete it. At the same time, he was gradually filling his soul vault with items that would not decay over time. Most of these came from the dragon's treasury, but he was careful never to take too much. For example, if the dragons held 100 healing potions, he might quietly take 30, doing so in a way that the treasury appeared untouched. The treasury was now heavily guarded, so Ash focused on collecting rare resources that could prove useful in the future. Phoenix blood, the blood of other mythical beasts, precious metals, and other valuable items. Hugh! He exhaled slowly, opening his eyes as warmth radiated from his body despite the light snowfall around him. His skin gleamed in the middle of the piled snow, catching the sunlight and reflecting it like liquid gold scattered across a white canvas. Slowly, he rose from his meditative position and stretched his body, feeling each muscle awaken and loosen. Now, what should I do today? There were so many things he could do. Checking on Alicia, making his sword art, creating new spells, gathering intelligence, laying the foundation for the organization he envisioned, inspecting the beast hiding behind the space crack, and countless other tasks. Before he could finish the thought, a loud ringing shattered the quiet. Ring! Hearing the loud ringing, Ash's gaze shifted toward his house. He was not too far from it, so the sound reached him clearly through the still air. A mail? The ringing was the notification sound that activated whenever important information was sent to him. Since the house had been constructed by the military, it was fitted with several such mechanisms and protective features. Teleporting inside within a blink, Ash appeared before the wall where a small screen, roughly the size of a normal television, was embedded. It was blinking continuously. He walked closer and touched its surface. The screen lit up immediately, and a stream of information unfolded in front of him. As his eyes moved across the text, a small smile tugged at his lips. So they are changing their ways. Nice. The message was from the academy, announcing that it would reopen in a few days, along with a significant change in its curriculum. Until now, the academy had followed a strict yet balanced system, one designed to ensure that even those unfamiliar with mana could, within 4 years, master its use and excel as capable mages. That was why only students with high potential and natural talent were ever scouted, as their ability to adapt and learn would guarantee results. But the sudden growth of dungeons had become a major headache for the Human Association, forcing the academy to change its focus. It was no longer going to remain a purely educational institution. Instead, it was transforming into a place that resembled a military zone, where the priority would be combat training, survival skills, and the study of only those theories that truly mattered. Students would now receive daily practical experience. The weaker ones would explore low-ranked dungeons while the stronger students would be sent into untamed forests outside human control, where they would search for wild dungeons and subjugate them. As the dungeons are sprouting like weeds nowadays, it was clear the association was using students to clear them and, at the same time, give them practical experience. Naturally, this path carried risks. Yet the Human Association had reached the conclusion that there was no other choice. Students needed to build real battlefield experience as quickly as possible, even if it came with the possibility of casualties. Ash could already guess what had pushed the Saints into taking such a drastic step, something they had never done in the original novel. The presence of the Whisperer must have been involved. In his own indirect way, he likely warned the others about the dark times in the future, which ultimately led to this decision. To be honest, Ash felt quite satisfied with the change. Even though he had fought many monsters since coming into this world, he had not yet faced enough to call it true experience in comparison to what might come. I guess I could look forward to what kind of training I will be receiving. Still, Ash had already made up his mind. He would try the Academy's new system for a single day, but if he felt that his own training produced better results, then he would return to his personal regimen without hesitation. After all, fighting monsters was something he could already do on his own. The neutral continent was filled with dangerous creatures, far beyond what the Academy could prepare, and if he wished, he could step into that land and gain all the experience he needed. Of course, the borders of the neutral continent were the most heavily secured in the world, precisely for that reason. Ash's lips curved slightly as another thought surfaced in his mind. It will also prove a great opportunity for Alicia to gain experience. Stretching his body, he slowly walked towards the exit again. There was a lot of intel he collected by moving from place to place, and with his concealment combined with teleportation, everything became far easier to accomplish. The elven continent was beginning to take shape much faster than he had expected. Serena was proving herself to be a perfect queen, her natural genius shining all the more because of the lessons she had carried with her since childhood. She was like a rough diamond that had finally begun to gleam. Now that the elves had resumed communication and trade with humans, the situation was steadily moving in a positive direction. Ash had also spoken with the Whisperer about the corrupted individuals who still remained inside the Human Association. The Whisperer had insisted on taking responsibility for that matter himself, declaring that it was his duty to cleanse such filth. Since he could peer into both their past and present, he could judge exactly how severely they deserved to be punished. The old man had not stopped there. He had also given Ash a collection of thick books, around 10 to 20 in total, saying they would aid him in developing his magic spells. He had also handed over several potions, unmistakably elixirs, and ancient ones at that. Among them, there was one elixir that the old man said would ignite his hidden potential and grant his body a short period of growth. The effect would last only a month, but even that much was valuable, especially since Ash's stats had not been increasing recently. The other elixirs carried different effects that strengthened his body in various ways. Ash had been suspicious of the Whisperer's generosity, particularly when he noticed the man's face turning red, as though he were being strangled by some unseen hands. When he asked, the Whisperer's only reply was that Ash was a hope, and he couldn't help much more than this. His hands were tied. Ash did not completely understand what he meant, yet at the same time he felt that he did. The books themselves were filled with forbidden spells, each one capable of causing large-scale destruction and chaos if unleashed. All of them were recorded in magic circle format, which made them practically useless to him. If anyone else heard him dismiss forbidden spells as useless, they would probably try to skin him alive. They were forbidden for a reason, after all. Still, they held value as inspiration. Even if he could not use them directly, they provided him with ideas for new spells he could create. As for the elixirs, he had already consumed almost all of them except for the growth elixir. Even without that one, the rest had been enough to break through his stagnation and push his stats to rise once again. Attributes: Strength, 400–415. Agility, 400–415. Vitality, 400–415. Intelligence, 400–415. Stamina, 400–415. Charm, 400–415. He was going to consume the growth elixir when the time was right, and he believed that time would come soon. That was not all. The information he had collected by venturing again and again into the Dwarven continent had been quite a shock as well. It left his mood sour for many days, and now, as he thought back on it, those memories resurfaced. These were the things he had discovered before the assassination attempt, and they lingered heavily in his mind. There was not one, not two, but 23 Hollow Mothers scattered throughout the entire continent, each one proportional to the number of underground cities of the dwarves. One of them had already been destroyed, while he did not include the central city in his count. He had no idea what was hidden there, and checking all 23 cities was already a troublesome task. The moment he drew near a city that housed a Hollow Mother, it became aware of his presence and immediately sent every dwarf in that city after him. All he needed to do was step inside to confirm whether a Hollow Mother resided there. However, he chose not to enter the central city. If he encountered whatever existed within and the same level of destruction occurred as with the last city, he did not know what he would feel afterward. He did not want to cause unnecessary deaths. He believed he should first gain perfect control over his death affinity, just as he had with life mana, before confronting whatever was hidden there. All right, let's go see Alicia. She asked me to reach the Academy Hall around this time. He did not know the reason, but he would know soon enough. He sent a message to Alicia, saying that he would arrive in 10 minutes. After all, she had asked him to let her know right before he came. He changed into better clothes, wearing a simple pair of black trousers with a brown shirt and a black sweater. Standing before the mirror, he took a moment to look at himself carefully. His short white hair, falling neatly to his neck, appeared almost luminous under the light. A small earring, a miniature form of eclipse, rested on his earlobe. His piercing blue eyes gazed back at him, steady and sharp, as though they could see through the reflection itself. His charm flowed out of him naturally, making his presence refined and magnetic, the kind that could draw the eyes of anyone nearby without him even trying. I am glad there is no one in the academy except for the workers and a few instructors. Otherwise, the countless admiring gazes would have made him feel far too uncomfortable. Letting out a light sigh, he teleported away. Appearing near the academy hall, which was one of several on the campus and often used either for training sessions or celebrations, Ash began to move slowly toward it. He was not teleporting this time because he had noticed how often he used teleportation for even the smallest distances, and it felt as though he was losing the simple beauty of walking. So he decided not to rely too heavily on his skill unless there was a real emergency or the distance was large. The sound of his steps echoed through the empty hallway, and in that silence, his mind felt strangely calm. His thoughts drifted to what he should do next. There were 3 major things he could focus on. The first was to go to the neutral continent and acquire the rune that might allow him to see the true runic names of other runes. The second was to venture into the unknown, to step through the space crack hidden in the untamed forest and explore what lay beyond. There was a chance he might discover a rune that was never mentioned in the novel. The third was to finally make a decision about his shell, the matter tied to his potential, and how he would handle it in the long run. Although these 3 choices seemed separate, they were connected in many ways. If he decided to venture into the unknown, how would he even recognize a rune if it appeared? It was nothing more than his guess that there might be a rune there, and this guess was based on how the system acted in the novel. There might be a rune, but there was no certainty. The butterfly effect of his presence could have possibly changed the behavior of the system. Without any skill to identify a rune, how would he find one? And even if he found it, how would he absorb it without knowing its name and what it does? If he chose to go to the neutral continent first and Ray happened to enter the space crack before him, Ray's system might allow him to absorb the rune instead if there was any. That would lead to complications in the future, complications Ash wanted to avoid. Hell, I don't even know if a rune can be separated without killing the person, or if killing someone even separates the rune at all. Ash had no answer to that. As for the third task, the problem of his potential, he left it aside. It was something that confused him greatly, and although he disliked ignoring it, he reminded himself that he could still grow for now. He would think about it when the right time came. Then that leaves either going to the neutral continent or the space crack? Before he could think further, he reached the hall where he was supposed to arrive. Relaxing his posture, he placed his hand on the door and pushed it open. Inside, there was no light, only darkness. Am I early? The lights are off. Believing that he had arrived too soon, he walked further inside and reached for the switch on the wall. As soon as he pressed it, the hall was filled with bright light. At that very moment, a chorus of voices rang out, full of joy and excitement. Happy birthday, Ash! Happy birthday, Ash! Hearing the combined voices of many people, Ash froze for a second. His eyes darted toward the wide hall, which was decorated all over. The sudden brightness revealed a scene that was simple yet filled with warmth. Streamers of soft colors, pale blue, gentle gold, and cream, hung unevenly from the ceiling, clearly put up by hand. A few of them drooped lower than the others, but instead of looking messy, they gave the hall a personal charm, showing the care and effort that went into every detail. Balloons were tied together in clusters near the corners, their ribbons curling loosely. Some had small hand-drawn doodles on them, as if someone had wanted to leave a private, personal touch, making the decorations feel intimate and heartfelt. On the walls, banners spelled out his name in bright letters, each one written in slightly different handwriting, as though several people had helped. The strokes were imperfect, yet they carried an undeniable sincerity that made the hall feel alive, warm, and welcoming. At the center of the room stood a modest table, draped carefully with a white cloth. On top of it rested a cake that was not extravagantly made but beautifully decorated, with uneven swirls of cream and tiny shapes pressed carefully into its surface. Surrounding it were small paper cutouts, folded flowers, and delicate decorations clearly crafted by hand, each one placed with care and affection rather than precision. Even the lights added to the feeling. Strings of bulbs ran along the ceiling, some brighter than others, casting a soft, golden glow that filled the hall with gentle warmth. It was not the perfection of a professional setup, but the kind of heartfelt preparation that spoke of time, effort, and the desire to make this day unforgettable for him. Ash remained frozen in place, his eyes capturing all these details in just a few seconds. Today is my birthday? Then he remembered today's date. Today was October 17th, his birthday. Ash had forgotten his own birthday because he never celebrated it. After Nancy's death, the day had become just like any other. In fact, he had even started to resent his birthday for reasons he could not fully explain. Over time, he had pushed the date from his mind entirely, treating it as unimportant. But seeing something like this sort of decoration and preparation, Ash felt his heart pound. It was strange. He was grateful that Alicia had done all this for him, and he even felt a quiet, instinctive urge to hug her for the effort she had poured into it, and shower her with lots of love. Yet, deep inside, a part of him resisted. It was not directed at anyone, not even at Alicia. The entire concept of celebrating a birthday felt foreign to him. His mentality, shaped by years of isolation and Nancy's death, had changed him in ways he had never anticipated. Festivities and seemingly normal moments of joy felt unnatural. In his previous life, he would rather have stayed cooped up in his room than join any kind of celebration or festival. He preferred reading novels, playing games, or simply resting instead of marking occasions with fanfare or ritual. Eventually, Ash reached a bitter but clear realization. Not everyone wants a loud birthday. Some people only want silence. No grand gestures, no over-the-top wishes, no forced energy. They want the day to belong to themselves, quiet and still. Perhaps they would listen to music they loved, eat something they enjoyed, or spend time on a private hobby. It was not sadness. It was simply the need for authenticity. Some had endured too much, felt too much to welcome superficial attention. Birthdays could feel hollow, filled with reminders that people only remembered out of obligation rather than genuine care. Most people only noticed the birthday because the date was saved somewhere in their calendar, a small reminder that told them to act. They were not important enough to cross anyone's thoughts naturally, without a prompt or obligation. Their existence on that day was acknowledged only to maintain appearances, to keep relationships polite, safe, and orderly, rather than out of genuine feeling or attention. It was a reminder of the difference between being seen and being truly known. That was why, for some, peace was the best gift they could give themselves. Ash did not know why this thought had come to him so suddenly, like an epiphany, but he knew it was true. Even though these thoughts were rooted in experiences from his previous life, he pushed them aside to focus on the present. Even though he felt strangely uncomfortable being around others he had barely interacted with, he still offered a smile to Alicia. He did not want her to feel hurt or disappointed because of him. Let's not ruin that smile on her face, shall we? Ash thought as he slowly moved toward her. She was already walking toward him, closing the distance while he remained lost in his thoughts. A quiet tension lingering in the air, filled with unspoken care and understanding. "Happy birthday, Ash!" Her sweet, melodical voice rang in his ears, making him smile even more. As he looked into her eyes, seeing the warmth and love that radiated from them, Ash felt a pang of guilt for feeling uncomfortable, for not enjoying the celebration of his birthday. Though he skillfully masked it behind an almost perfect poker face, he replied, "Thank you really, but there was no need to do something this big. I would have preferred something quieter, with some alone time even." Alicia just shook her head, a soft smile tugging at her lips, and took his hands, pulling him gently toward everyone. "Ho-ho, I knew you even forgot your own birthday. It was written all over your face the moment you entered the hall. And don't get me started. Alicia's chatter continued as she guided him forward, earning soft chuckles from those present. Ash's gaze flicked briefly toward them, but he ignored most of their attention and focused on Alicia's words. Still, a gaze pressed into him, subtle but sharp. Shifting his eyes, he found Amelia looking directly at him. The intensity of her stare made him stiffen slightly. The way she observed him felt almost like she was reading the emotions he had tried to hide. Crap, is she sensing the discomfort I feel towards celebrating birthdays? If yes, then it was going to create some misunderstandings. Ash reminded himself that not everyone would understand his feelings. What seemed normal and enjoyable to others often felt foreign or uncomfortable to him. He knew some might silently judge, but those words were not meant for him, and the opinions of others did not change his own feelings. Still, Amelia's stare made him tense. I just hope she doesn't do anything reckless. Otherwise, I don't care even if she is the granddaughter of that old man. To his relief, nothing happened. Though he did have to talk with everyone, it felt more like gentle guidance, almost as if someone were teaching him how to socialize. His whole body wanted to escape, as Ash had never been fond of interacting with people, yet he realized he had already spoken more that day than in many months. When it was time to cut the cake, a hush of anticipation fell over the group. Everyone leaned closer, eager to see the moment. Amelia's gaze remained on him, occasionally glancing at him as if she wanted to say something, but Ash deflected or ignored it. Malicia, in contrast, remained silent, her quiet presence a strange comfort and, at the same time, a little cruel. Ash wondered why she had come at all, yet the peace of her stillness allowed him a brief respite from social pressure. Aurora, on the other hand, held his attention with constant conversation. Her words tested him, playful yet persistent, though Ash knew her intentions were not ill. When the gifts were presented, he found himself appreciating many of them. Instructor Elva gave him a violet-covered grimoire filled with space theories, which instantly fascinated him. Theories were one of the few things that could directly help him improve his spells. Instructor Leonard's gift surprised him. He gave him boots that boosted his speed and increased his reaction time. It was practical and useful. Irvin gave him a defensive artifact, Lyra an elixir, Grace a seed filled with her mother's healing powers, and Aurora gave him a charm, saying it was filled with star luck. Though he didn't know what that was, he still appreciated it. Yet the gift that shocked him the most, the one that made him pause in a way nothing else did, was the present from Alicia. How? It was the only thing he could say after seeing what she gave him. The gift Alicia gave him was quite a surprise, something he had never expected. It was a painting of him and her, yet not of their current lives. It was a painting drawn from their previous life. Both of their faces were different from the ones they carried now, and even their hair and eyes had changed. The background too belonged to another time, a memory far removed from the present. As Ash looked at the painting and then at Alicia, he was left speechless. He could imagine how difficult it must have been for her to recall fragments of the past in such detail, how much effort it must have taken to put them together into something whole. After all, not everyone had the rune of knowledge like he did, and to reconstruct such a memory without it was something he could not help but admire. The painting itself told a quiet story. The strokes were uneven in some corners, messy in places, and Ash could almost see how often she must have grown frustrated while working on it. Yet, in those imperfections, he felt her sincerity. And now, watching her stand in front of him, smiling shyly with a nervous glimmer in her eyes, Ash felt his heart thump louder and louder, refusing to calm down. Thank you. This is something that truly means a lot to me. Alicia only shook her head, her lips curving into a brighter smile. I am glad you like it, Ash. At first, I wanted to give you something else, something better, but then I thought, maybe this would mean more. Anyway, let's play some games. The celebration continued after that. The instructors left once they had given their gifts, each of them excusing themselves with claims of urgent work waiting elsewhere. Malicia too left not long after, saying she had tasks to finish at home following the festival. But it was not true. There was no such work waiting for her. She had simply chosen not to stay because her mind and heart could no longer bear the sight of Ash and Alicia together. The feelings inside her threatened to burst through her control, her emotions already at their peak. So she left in search of some peace. The rest remained behind, and they played a few simple games. Ash joined them, though in truth he barely spoke. Whenever he did, it was usually 1 or 2 short lines, sometimes only a few words. It was Alicia who helped him, acting as a bridge between him and the others, easing the silence so that he would not feel completely out of place. Time passed, the hours slipping away, until the celebration finally came to an end. Everyone slowly departed, leaving Ash and Alicia alone in the hall. Ash sat back on one of the chairs, letting out a quiet sigh as he ruffled his hair. You know, right, I would have preferred spending time alone with you, rather than doing a birthday party like this. Alicia walked toward him, her steps light but steady, and sat on his lap. She leaned her body fully against his, her warmth pressing into him as she murmured softly, I know, dummy, but this world is different, and you don't have any real friends here. You hardly ever talk with anyone else, so I thought, maybe your birthday could be a chance for you to open up, to make a few genuine connections. Ash's hand gently brushed over her head, his sigh carrying both affection and resignation. Did you like it or not? She asked quietly, her eyes searching for his. Ash thought for a moment before replying with simple honesty. I loved everything you do for me. It's just that it felt unnecessary. Truth. Knowing his words carried nothing but sincerity, Alicia's smile grew warmer, her eyes softening even more. She pressed herself closer, and together they simply enjoyed the closeness, holding on to the quiet peace between them, letting the intimacy of the moment stretch on without end. Next day, October 18th. Hey, I want to talk about something, Ash said while sitting at the dining table, his hands resting on the wood as he leaned slightly forward. Alicia was beside him, calmly chopping vegetables, her silver hair falling across her shoulders. The rhythmic sound of the knife hitting the chopping board echoed through the quiet room, sharp and steady, like a clock keeping time. Hearing Ash's words, Alicia replied without looking up. Her hands did not pause, the knife continuing its precise movement. What is it? Ash hesitated for a moment, his eyes lingering on the knife in her grip. It was not directed at him, yet the words he wanted to speak carried a weight that could easily cause complications, and the presence of that sharp blade somehow made it feel even heavier. Maybe I should talk about this sometime later. Let's change the subject for now. Nothing. It's just that the academy is starting soon. What do you think about the new ways they have implemented? Alicia stopped for just a second, her knife hovering above the board. She gave him a brief glance, then sighed softly before resuming her work. The new methods the academy is introducing might feel harsh. I would not be surprised if many parents retaliate against it, since it concerns their children's safety. Hearing that, Ash shook his head and replied, Yeah, but if you think about it, with so many dungeons appearing these days, I believe parents might actually prefer this. They would rather have their children face risks under the supervision of people from the association than be caught completely unprepared later. Even if they get injured while training, at least it will happen in a controlled environment instead of during some real crisis. Well, that is true as well. It would give the younger generation more experience, which is something they desperately need. But Ash. Her knife slowed to a stop as she turned her head toward him. A faint, knowing smile appeared on her lips. Her crimson eyes glowed faintly, catching the light in a way that made them look sharper than usual. Now will you tell me what you actually wanted to talk about? I know you changed the subject at the last moment. You lied. Her silver hair framed her face as she looked at him steadily, and with the knife still in her hand, she appeared less like the girl he had gotten used to and more like someone who carried quiet authority. Damn the person who gave her that cheat skill. Ash cursed internally, but soon sighed. He straightened in his seat and met her gaze. I will be leaving on a journey as soon as the academy starts. There is no fixed date for when I will return, though I might be able to contact you if I find a signal along the way. So, don't worry about. But before he could finish, his words were cut short. Because A knife was suddenly pressed against his neck, the cold steel grazing his skin. Alicia was standing right next to him now, having moved faster than most people could blink. She has become quite fast, and her control over her body has improved a lot. Good, she is growing very well. Ash remained seated, calm and steady, even though the blade touched him. His eyes had easily followed her movement, and he had already expected something like this the moment he began speaking. I am coming too. Alicia's voice was firm, filled with finality. It was not a question or a request. It was a decision, and the way she looked at him made it clear she would not accept refusal. The blade pressed faintly into his neck, cold against his skin, but Ash simply looked into her crimson eyes and replied with equal firmness. No. The atmosphere in the room grew heavier, the air thick with tension. It felt as though a volcano had begun to rumble beneath the surface, ready to erupt at the slightest spark. But then, sigh! With a single exhale, the tension shattered. Alicia lowered her hand, the knife slipping from her fingers and falling against the table with a soft clatter. She pulled out a chair and sat across from him, her crimson eyes never leaving his face. Where are you going? Alicia asked, her voice soft, carrying a quiet concern that reached Ash in a way words alone could not. I can't tell you, Ash replied, keeping his tone calm, though a hint of hesitation lingered in his voice. When will you return? She continued, her hands moving absent-mindedly, brushing a strand of silver hair behind her ear. I don't know, he said, letting the words hang in the air, heavier than intended. Will you be safe? She asked again, her crimson eyes searching his with quiet intensity, as if trying to anchor him with her presence. Certainly, Ash replied, his voice steady. Silence settled between them, thick and gentle, punctuated only by the distant sounds of the room around them. Alicia let out a long sigh, soft but laden with unspoken patience and understanding. I hope you will someday make up your mind and tell me the truth you are hiding. I won't pester you, but I will be waiting for you to talk about it, she said, her words deliberate, carrying the weight of her care. Ash only nodded, a faint, quiet smile touching his lips. He knew how deeply she understood him, how even in silence she could sense what he could not say. But why did you change the subject at the last moment? She asked, a gentle teasing lilt to her tone, though her eyes sparkled with curiosity. Ash's smile froze. He looked sideways, avoiding her gaze for a moment, unsure how to begin. Well, I was just afraid, he murmured, barely above a whisper. Afraid of what? She began, eyes narrowing slightly as the realization slowly dawned. She glanced at the knife she had placed on the table and then back at him, the pieces falling into place. She smiled, rising to her feet, and moved quietly behind him. Her arms wrapped around him, warmth pressing gently against his back. Her voice was low and teasing as she whispered into his ear. Am I that scary? Ash's body stiffened slightly. It was not about strength or control or how he should act. It was a deeper instinct, a quiet, unspoken truth of the heart. Love had a way of weakening even the strongest, and his heart had long since recognized hers. And no, certainly not, he stammered, feeling his cheeks warm under the closeness. Tell me the truth. Another soft whisper grazed his ear, stirring a faint bead of sweat along his temple. It's just, in our previous world you used to beat me when you were angry, Ash admitted, his voice faltering slightly. Her arms tightened, holding him closer, and he felt her soft weight pressing gently against his head and cheeks. Heat rose to his face as a blush spread. Oh, not that right now, he thought, heart hammering. Those were only because you were heading down a bad path. You started smoking and even drinking, so I had to set you straight. Didn't you leave all those habits behind afterward? I'd say I did a wonderful job, she murmured, her words deliberate, almost satisfied. It wasn't beating, she added, leaning closer. It was just me making you better. Are you forgetting all that? Ash swallowed hard, nodding in silence. Right? she said, a playful warning threading her tone. So, Mr. Ashburn, don't pick up any bad habits in this life, because here, I've learned many new ways to discipline someone. Ash shivered slightly, imagining the consequences, and silently made a vow. I will not take any bad habits,